All right. Not much of a flashy countdown, but that's kind of by design. Sometimes people get annoyed by the other ones. So today I'd like to do a live stream, basically, kind of an open discussion on religion in general. Um, I put out a video today about my departure from religion as I see it. Um, Not because I believe Christianity isn't valid. I think there's a lot of great things in Christianity. I think Christianity, if I had to choose any religion, like I've stated, I think Christianity would be the one that I would pick. Now, it doesn't mean that I agree with everything that's in Christianity. I think there's a lot of bad, a lot of detrimental things that harm a person's walk with God in the Bible. But that doesn't mean that there's not a lot of good things in the Bible that people can't gain knowledge and wisdom from and spiritual enlightenment. Certainly a lot more than I would think other religions. Islam. I know a lot of really good Muslims, and Muslims follow the Bible, I would say, probably a lot closer than most Christians that I know follow, or Muslims follow the Quran rather closer than I know most Christians follow the Bible. Um, and there's a lot of reasons for that. I mean, the Islamic faith kind of it makes you it's kind of like a political ideology in a way. It governs everything right down to how you use the bathroom. So, I mean, it kind of takes over your life in a lot of ways. And some people like that. Some people like the structure. Okay. When you have a Bible that's got nearly 780,000 words and it's a mammoth book, if you're not really dedicated, you kind of not lose interest, but you don't know what to do. You kind of like start in this book, you go to that book. I mean, it's a mammoth reading. The Quran, probably about 77,000 words or so, probably a tenth of the size of the Bible. So, it's a lot easier, I would think, to follow Islam than it would be Christianity, because Christianity is not really structured in a way that I mean, it is, but it isn't. Like, it's kind of, they give you a lot of freedom, okay, which can be a good thing. I mean, with a lot of freedom comes great responsibility, because if you have this freedom, you're not forced in compulsion to be a Christian, today at least. But a lot of people kind of use the liberal tendencies of Christianity and they don't adhere to it, or they just say, well, I'll do these things and I'll repent Sunday and I'll be a good Christian Sunday. So you can see that a lot of Christians, you see the women on TikTok with their boobs hanging out and they got the Christian cross right between their boobs. It's just like, it's crazy. They're wearing a thong at the beach, but they got that Christian cross on, right? That's really proving it. It's kind of like, most Christians that I see today, it's Christian by name, but it's not by walk and by deed. It's just basically everybody's a Christian today. And so I think Muslims take their faith a lot more seriously, at least the ones that I know. And I think it's because it ingrains it in their life. It becomes their life. How, right down from the Hadith to the Quran, everything they do basically revolves around that. And that can be good, it can be bad. Christianity, again, a lot of Christians go to church, they listen to the pastor, they read the Bible, they can't really understand it. So they require a pastor or somebody, an elder, to basically give you the information that you can't gain yourself from the Bible. Because let's face it, most Christians today read the Bible, they don't understand it. And it's proven that 90% of Christians don't even adhere to the Trinity. They don't believe in the Orthodox Trinitarian belief because it's not taught. Okay. So I think it's probably not wise to rage blindly against just common sense and logic. I'm not somebody who's going to have unquestioning reverence to something. Okay. I look at something, I examine it. I'm a curious person. I look at it with honesty. I look at it with intellectual rigor. I have a deep respect for the timeless human quest to understand the divine, okay, the cosmos, and our place within it. And the Bible's shaped empires. It's inspired billions of people across millennia. It's comforted the afflicted and justified conquest. But yet, at every turn, it bears the unmistakable fingerprints of its human authors, their fears, their hopes, their cultural struggles, their evolving worldviews. Okay. It's not a flawless divine download from heaven, but it's a mirror of humanity's best attempts to grapple with existence. And so we can go through the Bible from the journey from the beginning to the end, and just look at some of the issues that we have. I mean, the garden and the setup, the innocence is punished here. You've got the luminous dawn of Genesis, and God creates a paradise garden called Eden. And here, Adam and Eve are formed not as infants who could learn and mature through trial and error, but as fully grown adults. They're capable of speech, responsibility, and moral choice from the very first breath. And amid the trees of life and every delight stands one solitary forbidden tree, right? The tree of the knowledge of good and evil. You shall not eat of it, God warns Adam and Eve. For in the day that you shall eat of it, you shall surely die. There's no explanation. There's no context. There's just a command, right? Now, pause and truly imagine the scene. Adam and Eve possess no concept of sin, no understanding of death's finality, no knowledge of deception or the serpent's cunning ideas. In fact, they weren't even told about Satan. They've never witnessed consequence. They've never felt shame. They've never grappled with good versus evil. Curiosity, the very spark that fuels discovery, science, art, moral growth, and every human advancement is woven into their nature as beings made in God's image. The serpent tempts Eve, reaches out, Adam follows. Their eyes are open to nakedness, shame, and knowledge itself. What follows is not the gentle correction of a patient father, not a second chance, not a measured lesson of, I must punish you a little bit so you learn. No, it's immediate, it's cosmic, it's generational catastrophe, expulsion from Eden, cursed ground that yields thorns, painful childbirth for all women forever, endless toil, right? For men and death, not merely for them, but inherited by every single descendant across thousands of years. No trial, no probation period, banished forever from the garden, lest they reach out again and eat from the tree of life and live eternally in their now fallen state. A loving, all-knowing creator places irresistible temptation literally in the center of paradise, withholds full understanding from innocent adults who had no time to grow or learn from experience, and then unleashes eternal punishment on the first infraction, punishing not only the curious pair, but every unborn child who would ever live. Okay, this is not the pedagogy of a wise teacher or a compassionate parent. It reads instead as the foundational setup of an ancient origin myth crafted by people in a harsh, ancient Near East, desperately trying to explain why life is filled with suffering, morality, labor, pain. And why curiosity leads to exile. Why innocence cannot endure. It's a story of explaining why things are the way they are. It's not a literal historical account of a fair divine test. A lot of people have questions. Well, why would God do that? Why would God do that? Why wouldn't God tell Adam and Eve about Satan? I mean, it's not fair to test Adam and Eve, and God knew they would fail, but he still does it. And because of that, he acts surprised. Well, geez, you did that. Now I'm going to banish you. Well, he already knew it was going to happen before he did, right? According to the Bible. And so this pattern only deepens and darkens as the narration unfolds. The flood drowns an entire world. Every man, woman, child, infant, and animal, sparing only Noah's family in what the text frames as divine regret over creation gone wrong. Oh my gosh, I'm surprised. I got to flood the world because man did me dirty, basically, right? It's kind of like he's surprised. Sodom and Gomorrah are consumed by fire and brimstone. In Egypt, God hardens Pharaoh's heart himself so the spectacle of 10 plagues can unfold, culminating in the death of every firstborn son. Wars of conquest follow with chilling commands, utterly destroy entire cities, men, women, children, even livestock, leaving nothing alive that breathes. The Amalekites were targeted for total annihilation, including infants and animals, centuries after the ancestors' offense. Jericho's walls fall, and every living thing inside it is put to the sword while the blood runs wild. Disobedient children, in Deuteronomy 21:18-21, lays it out. A stubborn, rebellious son who refuses parental discipline, gluttonous and drunken, is to be brought before the elders and stoned to death by the entire town to purge the evil from your midst. Not a private family matter, a public execution to instill fear in all of Israel. The prophet Elisha, I've covered on this many times. The prophet Elisha, fresh from succeeding Elijah, is mocked by a gang, they call him, of little children from the idolatrous city of Bethel as he walks the road. Go up, you bald head. They jeer at God's prophet, symbolically rejecting divine authority in a time of natural apostasy. Elisha curses them in the Lord's name. 2 she-bears, which would probably be Syrian she-bears, emerge from the woods and maul 42 of these children. They're not toddlers. They're youths old enough to form a mob and taunt publicly, but still shocking in its brutality. This is no mere children's tale. It's a stark demonstration of covenant consequences. Yet it leaves modern readers shaking their heads and reeling at the scale of divine response to mockery. Imagine, no second chances, no warning. You offend a prophet, that prophet doesn't have the patience, I guess doesn't have the fruit of the Spirit, because the fruit of the Spirit is kindness and love and patience and long suffering. That's what we're told. We're told to be like Christ, right? Well, Elisha certainly wasn't like Christ, because he didn't put his hand on a child or say, now children, go forth and just come hither. Let me give you some bread that I have, and show compassion. No, he immediately calls a curse upon them to the Lord. And the Lord honors that curse by sending 2 she-bears to Bakah to shred and rip apart these 42 little children. Okay, there's no love, there's no correction, just like in the garden. There's no second chances. Now, if we had a parent today that was like this, we would consider them to be demonic, diabolical, an abusive parent. But yet we're supposed to believe that God, who's love, would react in a way that he would have such a he wouldn't care about life. Let's just say that. Let's just put it that way. He would not care about life. If he's willing to shred little children because they make fun of a prophet's bald head, then he really does not care about kids. Okay. He doesn't have the patience that a father should have. He would be children's social services would be called on a parent today, and that person probably would be locked up in jail. Okay. If any of us, if any of us called one of our friends to come and stab or cut some little kids because they made fun of us, we would consider that person evil. Okay, we would consider that person not somebody that you would ever want to be around your kids. Yet we, when it comes to God and the Bible, we put our heads in the sand and we go, okay, well, God's ways are not my ways, and God can do what he wants. God can do what he wants because God creates life. It's sad that we turn our conscience off when we read a book that we're told, oh, everything in it's true, right down to the last letter. You have to believe it. And then we just go along believing that God would do something like that to children. Okay. Disobedient kids, stone them to death. Leave nothing that breathes in other instances. Okay. And then you got Job. Job, a righteous man, blameless and upright. In the heavenly court, the accuser, Satan, by the way, Satan in the Old Testament in Judaism was not a demon. He was just basically like an angel. He was an accuser. He was not a fallen angel in Judaism. This came along later in Christianity. So in Judaism, in the Old Testament, they did not believe that Satan was the Satan of today. God doesn't have somebody that he's going against and he's battling all the time. That's a Christian invention. That's not something that Judaism even believed in. Okay. So there's so many things that are different from what the Old Testament, the Torah believed, and what Christians believe today. See, he didn't have a cosmic mastermind like Satan running around trying to thwart all of his stuff. No, he actually works for God. He's an accuser, basically. He's a divine prosecutor. Okay. In Judaism, the accuser, Satan, is a divine prosecutor. He's not the later Christian devil that wagers with God. Okay. Does Job fear you for nothing? Take away his blessings and he will curse you to your face. And God consents, not once, but in 2 devastating waves. Raiders steal Job's livestock and kill his servants. Fire from heaven consumes more. A great wind collapses a house, killing all 10 of his kids. Okay. Then Satan is allowed to afflict Job with painful boils from head to foot. Job's wife urges him to curse God and die. His friends insist he must have sinned. Job protests his innocence, demands an audience with God, wrestles with the why of innocent suffering. The theological implications here are staggering. This is not a retributive justice for sin. It's a cosmic wager proven loyalty. God permits unimaginable evil and suffering and loss, not to teach Job, but to win a bet with the accuser. Human lives, children, servants are collateral damage in a heavenly test. When God finally speaks from the whirlwind, he does not explain or apologize. He doesn't resurrect Job's kids. He overwhelms Job with questions about creation's majesty. Where were you when I laid the foundation of the earth? Job repents in dust and ashes. God restores him double the livestock, new children, new prosperity, as if the dead family members were replaceable props. See, that's one thing I don't get about God in the Old Testament. He doesn't value life. He'll kill a kid in a second. He'll send bears to shred children in a second. He'll play with people's lives and kill them. And hey, if I kill your kids, I'll give you new ones and you better be happy. Human value appears secondary to divine sovereignty and the need to silence doubt. If this is the God of love, then why such cruel theater of suffering? The book stands as one of the Bible's most profound issues. We have issues with this, grappling with why the innocent suffer. Yet it offers no tidy answer, only awe before mystery. God's ways are not our ways. People will make excuses about it. And in doing so, it reveals the limits of ancient theology, a God who bets with evil rather than preventing it outright. This is the God of armies, the God of plagues, bears, and total war. A fearsome warrior deity perfectly suited for a tribal people in a brutal ancient Near East, surrounded by hostile empires. Their God thunders promises of blessings for obedience and curses for defiance. I will bless those who bless you and curse those who curse you. It deters invaders. It unifies the nation. It justifies conquest of the land. The culture did not merely receive this God, it shaped him as much as it shaped the culture, projecting their warrior ethos, their need for security, their explanation for suffering into the divine. We see this today in the Jews over in Israel. Okay. Do you think the Jews have Christians back? Only in the fact that we protect them, only in the fact that we provide them security and money. If they had somebody else to go to provide them with all the finances, they wouldn't go to us. They have no allegiance with Christian nation, which they believe is damned. You think the Jews love Jesus? Think again. You think Israel really has our back? No, they only have our back because we keep them alive, right? And they're the same way over in Palestine. You can see how they're just vicious. They're merciless. Okay, they have no mercy. Israel has no mercy. And the same thing was in the Old Testament. They had no mercy. Very brutal people against anybody that's not, let's say, a Jew, basically, right? They're for themselves. This is well known throughout history, and that's they always say they're persecuted. Well, a lot of the persecution comes from themselves because they hire Jews. They only stick to themselves usually, and they think they're a lot better a lot of times than other people are. Okay, because a lot of the Targums and the Talmud and the Old Testament was written by Jews about their God, and that's the God of Israel. And so the Christian God basically is kind of a hijacked version of the Jewish God and twisted and contorted to fit their own belief. So you got one belief that was just written, the God of the Jews, that's who he is. And then you've got the Romans who created a God of their own. And so you have the two gods, basically the two religions battling each other out. Both frauds, both competing. That's why you have no peace in the Middle East, because of religion. Religion causes this, okay? So centuries later, under Roman occupation, the tone of, go out and slaughter, don't leave anybody alive, kill everybody right down to the last woman, child, infant, it transforms dramatically. Jesus emerges preaching a radical ethic. Love your enemies, turn the other cheek, pray for those who persecute you. Blessed are the meek, right? The kingdom is now spiritual, interwoven to universal, non-territorial conquest type of religion. Paul and the Gospels reframe everything through a new covenant of grace. Surprise! Well, they had to because they were under Roman occupation. Okay. It's not the same God. It's a people adapting to powerlessness, no longer free to wage holy war or threaten invading armies with divine destruction. The message now evolves towards survival, towards hope, and transformation under an empire. A warrior ethos yields to the necessities of occupation. Yet tensions remain unresolved. Jesus quotes the Old Testament approvingly, affirms the law, and even intensifies some commands. The God who once commanded stoning now says, "Let him who is without sin cast the first stone." Is this continuity or is it evolution? The new covenant offers theological explanations, but the personality shifts from a vengeful warrior to a suffering servant. That feels profoundly human and cultural to me. The Jews under Roman occupation craft a message of inner victory when outward victory is impossible. And so you look at the Bible itself, the translations, the variants, the councils, the canon. The Bible itself carries the scars of human hands across centuries. There are literally hundreds of thousands of manuscripts variants in the New Testament alone, mostly minor spelling or word order differences from the copyists, but some meaningful different translations reshape meaning. Okay, the majestic, archaic King James Version versus modern, accessible renderings. Councils like Nicaea in 325 CE debated Christ's nature and produced creeds that defined orthodoxy for centuries. Later gatherings at Hippo, Carthage, and Trent finalized canons. The canon itself, not a single divine drop from heaven, but a gradual contentious process of selection, debate, and exclusion spanning decades and centuries. Early Christian communities read a broader range of writings. Some were labeled sidelined. Consider the Apocrypha or the Deuterocanonical books, Tobit, Judith, Wisdom, Sirach, Barak, and Maccabees, plus additions to Daniel and Esther. These are fully included in Catholic Bible, 73 books, as a matter of fact, and valued for historical insight and moral teaching. Eastern Orthodox traditions exclude or include even more, up to 79 or 81 in some canons. Protestants follow the narrow Hebrew canon, championed during the Reformation of Martin Luther's influence, exclude them as apocrypha, useful for education, but not for establishing doctrine. I think they got 66 books. So it's good for edification, but not for establishing doctrine. The Ethiopian Orthodox Bible contains more. One sacred text, many versions, each tradition claiming divine guidance. Yet the boundaries were drawn by human councils and cultural needs. Christianity itself morphed dramatically from diverse, often fractioned early communities debating faith versus works, baptism practices, and the Lord's Supper to an imperial religion under Constantine, then shattering in the Reformation into tens of thousands of denominations. Today, you can see them. Catholics, Eastern Orthodox, Protestants, and groups like Oneness Pentecostals who reject the Trinity all claim to have the true faith. Deep fractures remain on baptism, infant versus believers, salvation, faith alone, faith plus works, or once saved, always saved, hell, eternal conscious torment, annihilation, or eventual universal restoration, and the Eucharist. If one all-powerful, clear-speaking God authorized one unambiguous book, why is this chaos of interpretation and division so prominent within Christianity? The answer lies in human hands, human councils, and human power struggles. Deny the Trinity or that Jesus is fully God, you are labeled a heretic, outside true Christianity. Doctrines forged in creeds and enforced by institutional gatekeepers. You must belong to our group or you are not really a Christian. This is not divine simplicity, it's institutional control. Look at the stories themselves. They echo far older tales from surrounding cultures. The flood, the Epic of Gilgamesh, centuries older, features a divine flood, a hero building a boat, sending out birds to test receiving waters, and a survival granted immortality, or near it. Details parallel strikingly the boat's dimensions, the birds, the mountain landing, virgin birth, ancient myths abound with divine conceptions. Horus, born to Isis in a miraculous fashion, parallels and stories about Mithras and others, divine sons, dying and rising figures, heroic saviors. These motifs were common in antiquity long before the Gospels. Wisdom literature and Proverbs echoes Egyptian and Mesopotamian instructions, the golden rule, compassion for the poor, justice for the oppressed. These moral truths appear across Buddhism's Eightfold Path and emphasis on ending suffering through mindfulness. Hinduism's Dharma, karma, and the anismia, nonviolence, and Islam's call to submission, charity, and justice. Christianity did not invent ethics. It synthesized them, it universalized them, and centered them in a compelling figure of Christ. And Christ himself remains a profound model, role model, a radical love that crosses boundaries, forgiveness even from the cross, fierce care for the marginalized, integrity under persecution. Right? Many truths in scripture resonate deeply because they tap universally into a human longing and hard-won observations refined across centuries upon centuries before the Bible was compiled. Islam offers disciplined submission to one God through the Quran and 5 pillars: the prayer, fasting, and charity, pilgrimage, fostering community and moral clarity. Buddhism provides, psychology for endless suffering through the 4 noble truths and Eightfold Path. No demanding creator God, just tools for mindfulness living. Hinduism, vast pluralism, embraces dharma, reincarnation, which I don't agree with, multiple devotional paths to the divine, celebrating diversity rather than enforcing uniformity. All of these religions, in my opinion, are wrong. They have it wrong. They're all mankind's attempt at trying to understand God. They're all sincere human attempts to touch the transcendent, offering wisdom without claiming monopoly. And look at the modern exodus today. Many are leaving. Millions today are walking away from organized Christianity, not out of nihilism or rebellion, but exhaustion with contradictions, institutional scandals, politicization, and a book that demands perfection while displaying human flaws. Imagine you have to be perfect, and yet you follow a book that is flawed. The Bible is anything but perfect. Okay. When you have to be perfect and you follow a book where nobody can agree, everybody's fighting each other, you go and you believe in your heart and you've studied the Bible and you really believe a certain way, and then you go onto a live stream and you got 3 other people that read the same book and none of them have the same idea that you do. It's really frustrating because who's right? Then these people a lot of times don't even really want to hear what you have to say. They'll just know you, and they're trying to convince you of what they believe. And you're up there, if you're a truth seeker, you're trying to understand their observation, and they really don't care about listening to you. They just want to preach what they believe. And if you don't agree with them, then you're basically, you're lost, or you're not really a Christian, or you're stupid. You don't have the insight they do. And so that's one of the most frustrating things I saw as a Christian was nobody agrees. Nobody agrees. We have the same book. Well, I guess we do. Every translation is different. Well, I got the King James. What version do you read from? I read from the RSV. What version do you read from? I read from the NIV. Oh, stay away from that one. King James. Oh, stay away from that. It's all just, everybody is arguing and fighting over what interpretation is valid, and everybody has their own way of reading it. And so you either read the Bible and stand firm in what you believe and don't let other people, you might listen to other people, but don't let them persuade you, kind of just hear things out and stick on that path. But then you can't conform to the Trinity because that's not clearly taught by anybody either. So you just really have a lot of work ahead of you, let's just say, if you're a Christian, because unless you really stick to your own guns and you stick to the spiritual aspects of it and don't get too technical, you're really going to have a hard time at it. Okay, you're really going to have a hard time at it, especially when you go up in these panels and they're arguing and fighting and once saved, always saved. Is baptism necessary? I mean, it is a disaster. It's a mess. And to think that a perfect God would leave us with a religion this chaotic, this confusing, with the churches that they don't even agree, I think is beyond ridiculous. Okay. Then God has a lot to answer for. And I don't believe God would punish people. And if he does, then I guess he's just a merciless, unforgiving God that he was in the Old Testament. If he's going to punish us for questioning the Bible, for not really believing everything that's in the Bible, because how it was put together would make anybody question it. Because if you just blindly follow something, then you really aren't using the common sense, logic, and wisdom that God gave you. Okay. How do you know that you're not being deceived by Satan? How do you know that Satan didn't create large fractions of Christianity to get you off the one-to-one relationship with God? You don't know that if you put all your eggs in one basket and you follow something that was put together by men that has massive problems with it, and you're okay with it, then you're just putting all your eggs in one basket. Like I said, you have to be open to being wrong, but also admit the Bible has massive problems with it. And like I said, how do you know it's not a deception? You don't. So you just believe it. Well, God, the Bible it says it, so it must be true. It's circular reasoning. Okay. And so a lot of people become atheists because of the Bible. They cite the problem of suffering and logical incoherence. Others turn to Islam for its structure and clarity. Many become spiritual but not religious, seeking direct experience over dogma. Decades of teaching biblical inerrancy create cognitive dissonance. Believers must turn off their conscience when confronting Old Testament atrocities or New Testament tensions. If the Bible is flawless and God eternally punishes disbelief in it, then a truly fair and just God is not there. He's absent. The very chaos of denominations and interpretations screams human authorship. If God is going to punish you because you get your belief wrong, when the Bible itself is a disaster, it's a mess, nobody agrees. Look at all these panels we have today. They're an embarrassment. They really are, because everybody's up talking, and it's like your own little group, your own little clique. Nobody agrees. Everybody debates. And it's the same thing. Is baptism salvational? Is salvific? Is once saved, always saved biblical? Why are we even asking that? It should be clear as day. Hey, if you are saved, you will never lose your salvation. If I was a prophet, I could have demonstrated so many things in the Bible that would have been so easy to understand. Okay, I would have said something like this. Once you're saved and you inherit the salvation promise from God and from Christ, you cannot ever lose your salvation no matter what you do. God will always want you to come to repentance, but that is eternally secure. You're never going to lose it. You will always be accepted into heaven. I could have said something in a couple of paragraphs that would have solidified everything in the Bible. No question about it. Okay, baptism. You must be baptized in order to enter heaven. If you are not baptized as Jesus was, you will not be accepted into heaven. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. I said that in a couple of sentences that would have eliminated all of this confusion, but we don't have that in the Bible. Okay, we have all of these vague verses, very ambiguous for a reason, because they're man-made. And so when we have ambiguous verses, we have many different faiths because everybody interprets it differently. A divine book, if we're going to be judged on it for all eternity, if that's our book for living, from God, and we're going to be judged on it, and it carries eternal consequences, you would think it would be clear. Not a book of ambiguous verses where you can interpret it different from the same person down the road who just read the same book and they say, "No, I don't believe that. I believe this." Like, what on earth? Like that. Nobody would follow a book today that was that ambiguous when everybody disagreed with it. You'd say that is a confusing book. Okay. Nobody would take this book to be a life coach because nobody agrees. The standards on it are not universal. Okay. So I'm not claiming I could be a prophet. I could be a prophet better than the ones that are in the Bible, but the way the Bible was written, I presenting what should be taught and what should be disregarded. Okay, let's just say, and I think anybody could. If we get down to it, if we wanted to teach the Trinity, for example, we could teach it so easily. We could just tell you that God's three persons, they are co-equal, co-eternal. Three persons who are one God, the Father, Son, Holy Spirit. That is a clear teaching, yet we don't find that in the Bible by anybody. We have inference, we have vague verses that we can cobble together and patch to make our belief work, but there's no clear teaching of a Trinity in the Bible. There's no clear teaching that baptism is required or not. I believe it is. I believe it's required, but it's not clear. There's verses that kind of go against it, back and forth. People argue for it. To me, that's man-made all over. Again, canonization, the process, the Old Testament from the New, it's a disaster. Okay, it's a disaster, and that's okay. It can be a disaster, but it has a lot of spiritual things in it. When you read the Bible, you have to be able to discern what you need spiritually and what you don't need. You don't need to be arguing over baptism. Get baptized. If you're worried about it, get baptized. That's my recommendation. Jesus was baptized. Go get baptized. Why not? Okay. Don't take a risk of once saved, always saved. Well, I'm saved. It doesn't matter. Well, I would not take that chance. Okay. These are the things that I would not do. I would not take that chance of you thinking that once saved, always saved is true, because the Bible's got a lot of surprises in it, and it might not turn out the way you think it is. So I would not go, well, I don't need to be baptized, and you find out you need to, well, you're kind of toast. Or once saved, always saved, you find out that's true, you're toast. So, that's the problem with the Bible is it's got a lot of surprises and nobody has it written down to the letter. Now, it'd be a lot different, like I said, if you had it boom, boom, boom. God the Father is the only God there is. One single entity, one single person, the Father alone. Nobody else is God. I could demonstrate that in a couple of sentences or paragraph that would leave no ambiguity about it. Okay. God the Father alone is God. There's nobody else who's called God. There's many gods that are called these by titles, but there's only one God, supreme God, God the Father. That's it. Nobody else. Okay. That would be end. That would be the end. I would have that done. I would have that all stitched up in a couple of sentences. Okay, baptism. You must be baptized. I would boom, 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 boom. You must be baptized in order to be saved. Otherwise, you will not be welcomed in the kingdom. Once saved, always saved. No, you can lose your salvation, because if you turn away and start to sin, you are not forgiven. You have to come to repentance and try to walk obediently. And so you could make all these cases. Don't eat food. If you eat these foods, you will be, you'll endure the wrath of God or whatever. You could make anybody that follows these beliefs. You take a person that follows the law today. That person could really make a great argument, and they would make sure that when you read that Bible, you would understand that you are to keep the law. Okay. If a Trinitarian wanted to teach the Trinity in the Bible, they would be able to tell you very easily, very succinctly in a couple of paragraphs or sentences that the Trinity is true. They would be able to define it. All of these things that we argue about, and they've been arguing about for centuries, would able to be rectified by any one of us could sit down and bang these things out really clear, and we would not have any questions about it. You would have it as clear as day, everything laid out right in front of you. But unfortunately, the Bible is a mess. Okay, it's not clear. It's patched together with various passages. Some are pseudographical. You don't even know who wrote it, like Galatians, for example. The scholars agree it's not Paul that wrote that, it's somebody else. So who was it? Are you really going to are you really willing to put your eternal destiny into a book plagued with errors? Okay. That's what if you're wrong? That's the scary thing about the Bible is we're putting all of our eggs into one basket on something that's plagued with problems, with errors. And we're told it's true. And the God of the Old Testament is diabolical to children, to people. Okay. It conflicts with the New Testament God. We have all these canonization issues with the books taken out, right? Put back in, changes. I mean, it's a mess. So people really need to think. If you're wrong, you could really be hosed, okay? You could really be hosed. Now, if the Bible was like it had no problems or minor problems, then sure, but everything about the Bible reeks with man-made deception. Okay, not to say that the Bible is not a good book for many things, it is, but to say that God has his hand wrapped around it and he authorized everything is nonsense, in my opinion. Okay. And that's why we have so many problems today, is because people are locked into religion. Most people are more interested in trying to figure things out. See, that's the danger of it, because you have a Bible. Okay, now it's a massive book. It's very confusing. So you don't really understand it yourself. You go to church, you're kind of like, whoa, everybody disagrees with things. The person down, listen to the pastor, he might not agree. You go to another church, that pastor disagrees with that pastor. You're like, whoa, what's going on? So people spend a lot of their time going to YouTube, listening to people talk. They spend hours and countless hours in forums, in these on these live streams, on panels, talking 6 hours, 4 hours a day sometimes on something that should be clear. And what do you see at the end of the day? No change, just people talking about what they believe. Okay. Like I said, it's madness. And going through the thousands of hours that I spent myself, I regret it. I regret all of it, because it's something that I could have taken that time and done something productive. Walked, in nature, maybe try to do something for the elderly, try to benefit somebody. All of these man hours we spend on these panels, all of these men getting together and talking about what they believe, and nobody really agrees, instead of going out and helping the community, volunteering, doing something for God, not getting up on stage and just basically look at me or whatever. I've been guilty of it too. I'm not pointing fingers. I'm just saying that I regret it. And the world would be a much different place if we didn't have these people like, God Logic. He's got the chef's hat on. He's got the little stirring spoon. It's all basically like a comedy show. Okay, now they're debating Muslims and go back and forth. It's just fighting back and forth and fighting. That's the product of religion. Okay. The problem with religion is, again, there's no clear universal text in any faith. All of them have variants. All of them have different ways to read it. And you want me to believe that a God who's all-knowing, all-wise, is going to give us books of chaos where we're going to fight, we're going to grapple, we're going to interpret things differently. And if we get it wrong, we're going to go to hell. Okay? Nah. See, that's the problem. And I think the real thing we're missing is we've all been deceived by religion. We've all been deceived by religion. We spent all of our time focusing on religion created by man, continuing to echo what people have done throughout centuries, is promote man-made doctrines instead of taking a step back and saying, God, you lead me. I'm not going to be led and tossed like a ship without a rudder in the sea by all of these different denominations. all of these different faiths, because you cannot have true peace when you don't have uniformity. There's not one accord. The church down the street differs from the church up the street. Okay, there's not one accord. Everybody's got their own different belief. Okay, but if you took a step back and you said, okay, I'm going to read the Bible and I'm going to take the things that I need spiritually out of it. I'm going to discard the rest. But my goal is to be as spiritually pure as I possibly can, to be as godly as I possibly can, to be as close to God as I possibly can, to have a relationship with God. I think that's going to far better you. I think you're going to be far more advanced than if you allow these outside voices to infiltrate your belief and your path. Because now it's not really a continuation of you and God. It's you going on panels and listening to everybody else believe what they believe. That's their relationship with God. And you have a relationship with God. They clash because why? Because you are a different person than they are. You have a different path than they do. Not everybody's the same. Not everybody's made the same. We all have unique challenges that we need to get over in this life. And some can get over it easier than others. And the problem with religion is when you have difficult obstacles, if some people are over it better than you, if you're in religion, well, you just don't have enough faith, or, you need more prayer. And a lot of people are very condescending, very obnoxious and arrogant. It's all a path that we all have individually. And I think if we looked at things that way, if we looked at things universally, like you're a person, you have a path, your path is to become as righteous and godly as you possibly can, and so is mine, then you're not going to marginalize people based upon religion. Okay, religion causes a divide. Religion causes division. It causes confusion. It causes chaos, and it creates a cult-like mentality. And then you're trying to fit into a clique, into a little group. And how much time have we wasted trying to fit into a group that agrees with us rather than go along with God who leads us individually? Okay. Individually and collectively as a society. The problem with religion is we're never going to be universal as a society because all of us are fractioned off into little groups. We're not looking out for each other anymore. Okay. We're looking out for our fellow brothers in Christ and in Christianity. We're not looking out for Muslims because they have a different faith. Oh, they're going to hell. They follow Prophet Muhammad. Well, Christians should not be talking about their faith because Christianity is a dumpster fire. Okay. I believe Christ is a better role model than Muhammad, but Christianity has its own problems. Okay. So the way I look at people now is I just look at people as struggling. Okay. I look at people as people who follow the Bible. Hey, what's up? Happy birthday. Yeah. I look at people as those who follow the Bible, as those who follow the Quran, as people who are seeking truth. And there's so many different people that are seeking truth. Everybody's trying to grab things. That's why some people will dump Christianity and go to Islam because to them it fits better. See, so they're going from one religion to another, which is a problem. No religion, in my estimation, has the truth, but people will take from certain religions things that adapt to their personality better. They'll read the Bible with their own flavor because they have a different personality than the person next to them. Okay. One person's upbringing might lead them to believe something different. So they read the Bible, they read it through their own prism and their own lens. And so you could talk to this person 1,000 years and they would never see it the way you do because they don't have that same mindset. They don't have that same framework. And that's why you have these oneness believers and the Trinitarians and the Jehovah's Witness and the biblical Unitarians. They're all different sections that read the same book. Okay, to me, that's man. Okay, that's man-made. Okay, God, if he wanted to, could have given us a book very clear, very concise. Like I said, I could have written the Bible a lot better than the prophets. Most people could have, okay? Because I would have made things non-negotiable. I wouldn't have left versatility. I wouldn't have left. I wouldn't have left a different way of thinking. I would have said very clearly, God's one person, the Father alone. Nobody else is God. I would have spent time on that. Boom, boom, boom. Not throw in little ambiguous verses here where you can kind of twist and contort. Baptism, once saved, always saved. These are things that I would have hammered home where there would be no mistake about it. And you know for a fact, if eternity is on the line and we have to depend on this book as our eternal salvation, that we should not be on panels trying to figure it out. Trying to figure out the divine message from God, and nobody agrees. That is the biggest red flag I've ever seen, and nobody agrees to it. Aside from the fact that we have all these problems with the books being put together, books taken out, putting back in, changed, plagiarized. Come on, okay? So, I could not continue to go on that path when I saw the problems in religion. Like I said, not that Christianity isn't good for some people. It is. Not that Islam is not good for some people. It is. But you have to be really blind, colorblind in many ways, to not see the ink on the pages, to see the problems in Christianity, to see the problems in the Bible, to see the atrocities that God is responsible for, according to the Jews, in the Old Testament. Now how God's a loving God in the New Testament, okay? So millions are walking away from religion. And if the Bible is flawless and God eternally punishes disbelief in it, then again, a true and fair God is not biblical. The very chaos of denominations and interpretations screams human authorship. Christianity, like every religion, Islam, Buddhism, Hinduism, and countless others, is humanity's sincere, flawed, beautiful effort to understand the divine, morality, and the cosmos. It gets quite a bit right. The call to love, the hope of redemption, the ethical pinnacle of Christ, but it bears the inevitable mark of its times, the tribal fears, the cultural adaptations, the power struggles, borrowed ancient motifs, editorial hands across centuries, the canonization process, the denominational wars, the doctrinal litmus tests all declare this is man-made. And God does exist, but he transcends any single book, creed, or culture. Truth seeks, people that are seeking truth should demand we honor the Bible's beauty and wisdom while honestly acknowledging its problems and its shadows. Question boldly. Retain what nourishes the soul. Discard the chains of literalism that force us to defend bears mauling little children or generational punishment for a single act of curiosity. We are all, in a metaphor, descendants of Adam and Eve, curious, we're fallible, reaching for light in the garden of existence. And so, again, people just have to take a step outside the box. Do you really think an all-wise, knowing God, a loving God, a just God, a God who has your back, would leave you with a book of chaos, confusion, where you are scrambling through it? You're not finding peace in the Bible. Peace would be a very clear dictation. A loving parent would not give a child confusing directions and then punish that kid if they didn't get it right. It's kind of like a parent who has attention deficit disorder, and they're writing things and they're disjointed, they're run-on sentences, and they give this kid this piece of paper, and this kid's kind of like, I don't know, and the kid gives it to the to the younger or the older child, and he doesn't understand it either. And all of the kids have a different understanding of the note the parent wrote. So the parent writes the kids a note to follow instructions, and all four children read it differently. Who's to blame? The children? No, the parent is, for not being clear on what they wanted. And so when you go through a book that's supposed to be divinely inspired, and you've got all of these different books taken out, putting back in, you've got variations, you've got variants, you've got forgeries, you've got just councils and creeds, you've got people being burned alive and punished. You got to think about what you're following, okay? What if you're being deceived by the Bible? Have you ever thought about that? Have you ever thought about Satan's ploy at being deceptive and using religion to keep you focused on debates, focused on what ifs, focused on confusing passages where you have to spend all of your time trying to figure these things out instead of, hey, I'm going to walk today in peace, love, and righteousness and try to be as godly as I possibly can, meaning pure and holy, and focus on this. Not let the voices of contention, disagreement, and division cloud my thinking, because that's what these panels are. You can't go on these panels and walk away with just, that was just a great, I mean, sometimes, but most of the time it's fighting, it's yelling, it's cussing, people being nasty in the comment section, people disagreeing. You have a belief, you want to defend it. Somebody comes on, they're either trolling or they want to defend their belief. Jesus is God. He's fully man. He's fully God. You know, the hypostatic union. Well, I don't believe that. Don't bring the Trinity here. You know, it's just, like I said, it's the Bible is the cause of this. Okay. And so to me, and I'm not the only one, obviously. The problem with Christianity, though, is some people are so ingrained in it that if you even question the Bible, then you're considered a heretic and you're not a Christian. Well, again, what is a Christian in Christianity? Oneness, they're on their own little island. Trinitarians, on their own little island. Biblical Unitarians, on their own little island. Jehovah's Witnesses, same. Everybody claims to be a Christian. Everybody claims to be a Christian. But nobody agrees with what the Bible teaches. And that should be your first red flag. Why? Why do we have this much contention? Why do we have this much confusion? Why are we flocking to YouTube to go on panels to have people tell you what the Bible says? Why can't I open this book, if it's divinely inspired, and read it? Why does my heart ache when I see little children, the katana orim, the little children being ripped to pieces by bears under the authorization from God to a prophet? Why does that bother me? That should bother you. The problem is people have turned that conscience off. They become numb to the atrocities that God allows in the Old Testament, mostly on his behalf, mostly sending angels and others to just slaughter, cut the throats of little children. Okay, can you imagine? Just put yourself in that time. And these are for small infractions sometimes. He hardens Pharaoh's heart, and then he goes and kills all the firstborn. Okay, he has no mercy. And so I really have a hard time believing that God's up in heaven right now with the souls of the ones he slaughtered, and he's going to spend all eternity with the ones he killed. You're going to spend all eternity with your murderer, right? God, who loved you, he had you cut from your, it just, no, I don't agree with that. To me, I think it makes more sense that God created life as it is, and he set it in motion. He's not somebody who's sitting back watching and intervening when he wants to. That's why the Bible's miracles don't work. Okay, they do not work the way we're promised. And it's not God's fault. It's just that the Bible has empty promises. The Bible promises promises you that you will lay hands on them and they will all be healed. But excuse after excuse, take the pastors, the preachers, go to the hospitals. They have no effect on the children. They might lay a hand on somebody and God might intervene. I'm not saying that God doesn't intervene sometimes, but it's at God's will. We're not promised the things we're promised in the Bible. They do not work. Okay. And it's very dangerous to believe they do. Lots of people have died because I don't need that medical attention. God will heal me. I don't need chemo. God's going to heal me. I just have to have faith. Well, faith can do a lot of things. I've seen atheists myself that have been terminal, and they say I'm not going to die, and they don't. They have a reversible. They had a terminal illness, and they no longer have it. Well, what happened? They don't believe in God. They didn't have faith in God. What they did have is faith in themselves. And I think God will give you faith in yourself. God will work spiritually in you so you can have that. And the atheist might not believe in God, but God believes in them, kind of thing. Okay, because I believe that God gave us a conscience, all of us. And that's our connection to God. Not a book, not a creedal statement, not a paradoxical church doctrine, a conscience with God. And I think if people started looking at that and started off going, okay, I got a Bible, and I got to be honest, that Bible is very confusing. I've been reading it for a long time, and every time I read it, guess what? Something seems to pop up. Well, guess why? Because you read it through new knowledge that you've learned in today, and you might read it 5 years from now, and you might read it a different way because it's interpretable. It depends on your mode of thinking. It depends on what you've learned just in everyday knowledge. Okay, because if something is worded something differently, when you read it 5 years later, you might read it a different way because your mind thinks differently. It's not because you have a new revelation. It's just that you read it differently. Okay. And so when you have a book of 780,000 words, when a lot of it is very open to inference, then of course you're going to read things differently than the other person. Okay. But you can expect all of us, and I'm guilty. I feel bad. I feel bad because, I used to attack Trinitarians for a long time. That's my channel. That was my channel, to attack the Trinity. And I feel I if I could go back in time, I never would have done it because I wasted a lot of time harming a person's faith. Okay. I'll never do that again because to me, a person's faith is their faith. If they want to believe in the Trinity and it helps them live a more righteous life, I'll never say don't believe in it. Okay. Whatever. That's their deal. Who am I to argue against it? Do I believe it's taught? No, I don't. But to me, I think it's more damaging to try and tear down somebody's faith than it is to just say, hey, leave them alone. Let them believe what they want. Who are we to judge when Christianity itself is a mess? Everything's a mess in Christianity, mostly. Okay. So I think that people that are arguing against all of these different faiths and religions, you're really doing a lot of harm to just religion in general causes harm. But I think people are going to answer a lot to God one day when we. I'm probably going to be in a lot of trouble, but I've repented and tried to come clean on it. I did a lot of bad things within the Christian faith because a lot of my videos were attacking other people's faiths. And I feel bad about it now because in my religion itself is a detriment. So why would I prop up my belief based upon a religion that I think is paradoxical to go against somebody else's faith? To me, to be honest with you, if I was honest, I think the Catholic Church and the Orthodox Church, I think, to be honest with you, even though I believe that if I was to take the Bible and go by what's taught, I would go by the biblical Unitarian faith. But what do I believe would give you a better walk and a godly life? The biblical Unitarian faith as it is, or to be a member of the Orthodox Catholic Church or Eastern Orthodox or something like that. If I'm being honest, I think being a member of the church would be more beneficial. because I don't believe any of the religions within Christianity have the truth. But I think belonging to a church that tries to struggle towards being pure and holy, and you have a structure, is far more important than you being alone by yourself. I have the truth. God is one. And you go to a little church, or you have none, and you miss out on all the fellowship and community of people. Because those people in those churches probably disagree with many things the church teaches, but they want to be a partaker of the church. Many of them are Trinitarian. They don't agree with the Trinity. See, that's the really ironic thing about this whole process, is you have these structured churches. And looking back, I probably would have been more encouraged to be a member of even a Catholic church, because at least you have a place you can go to. Okay, you can take your belief as you have it now and still go to a church and still stick to your guns and not be persuaded by certain church doctrine. All right. But when you isolate yourself, that's the danger of Unitarianism, or the danger of your church is your own island. You become marginalized, you become sectioned off, and now your church is YouTube. Your church is TikTok. Your church is getting together with your four buddies or whatever and talking about God. That's not the way God wants us to operate in our lives, to me. If I could have it my way, and I could just basically snap my fingers, I would eliminate all religion, in my opinion, because I think religion holds us back. Now, there's a lot of advancements that religion has gathered. Okay, so I wouldn't want to it's not something that religion has created out of chaos. It's just universal truths that wise men wrote into a book. If I wanted to write a book, I could write a book of a lot of wisdom. The knowledge that I have today, the degrees that I've got, the advancements that we have technology. I could write a book that would have a lot of wisdom in it. A lot of people could do it. Okay, a lot of people could do it. I would say, don't smoke, don't drink. These are things that are pretty smart, right? Don't cheat on your wife. Take charge. Lead a noble life. These are things that are. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to know about these things, and I could take and build upon the backs of others and put it into a book that could transform somebody's life. Okay, you take somebody that's struggling, that reads a book that's got some good insight and wisdom. It changes people's lives. And I don't doubt that the Bible can change people's lives, because the Bible has spiritual things in it. Okay, all religions have spiritual aptitude to them. Some are more wise and probably more cut to the chase than others. And I think Christianity, like I said, Christianity gets the most right, I believe, of the religions, because it's more spiritual, and you have somebody who in Christ was as spiritual as you possibly can be. He wasn't caught up in, polygamy. He wasn't caught up in sinning. He was a very righteous person. Okay. So that's a great example to walk like him. If you have a role model like that, regardless of your faith, you can't go wrong. Okay. So, but it doesn't mean you have to accept all of the things that are written in a book that was canonized by men that has a lot of problems. That's why some of the most peaceful, loving, compassionate Christians that I know are not caught up in any of this. They're not caught up in any of these live streams. They're not doing any teachings. Do they believe in the Trinity? Sure, as they shrug their shoulders. They don't even think about it. They don't get technical about it. They don't get into the Hebrew and the Greek. What do? They spend 99% of their time focusing on the spiritual things, the fruit of the Bible, and leaving all of these other things out the window. They don't focus on these things. They don't get down to how many people were there. Let's have a live stream on, was a serpent really in the garden? These are things that are such a distraction from the spiritual fruit that you should be gathering and nourishing your soul in the Bible. They're a distraction. And that's probably one of the most detrimental things I think the Bible has given us, is it's given us this humongous book that Christ never had, this humongous book that we have to grapple with. We have to dig through all of this coal to find the diamonds in the rough. And I think the best thing people can do is get cliff notes, basically, of the fruits of the Spirit and try to put those in your life. Meditate on that. Meditate on prayer. Try to put it into your life. Don't spend hours upon hours like I did trying to figure out if Hebrews 1:8 talks about the predicate nominative or the vocative. Like, is that really going to change my life? No, it's not. And that's why we see such a barren wasteland within Christianity today. Because unfortunately, a byproduct of the Bible is trying to find things out. Now we have to look at the Bible with a fine-tooth comb, a gumshoe kind of approach. We look at it through a magnifying glass, trying to find things out because things are not clearly spelled out. And we become so fascinated with trying to figure things out that we miss the forest for the trees. We're not focusing on the spiritual things. Go out, do God's work, try to have God manifested in your life. It's now more of an intellectual quest. We're trying, and we'll never, it'll be an infinite job. The day you die, you will never know if you have the truth because it's open to your interpretation. You could spend a bazillion years on all this study, and on your deathbed, I guarantee you, you will regret every second of it. And I can't tell you how many people I've seen do that exact same thing. Okay. And that opened my eyes to a lot of things. Seeing people die, seeing people that will never be able to go out and help anybody or be able to walk in nature. They spent most of their time arguing about intellectual things that are open to interpretation. What a massive waste of time I spent on doing that. Because I was tricked into a book that has just infinite inference. Infinite inference. The day I pick it up, I could read it and I give it to somebody else. They would not come away with anything close probably to what I just read. You want me to believe that any book, if we gave anybody a book and I gave it to 1,000 people and they all gave me a summary of what they thought and all of them wrote and probably none of them agreed, would I be a good communicator? No, they would say this book is confusing as all get out. I couldn't what does this mean? And everybody would get together and they'd have all these panels and talk about what did the author really mean by that? Well, I thought he meant this. No, I would probably be fired and I would not receive any further publication because I would just basically be like a gruely lunatic. Okay. If I wrote a book, I would expect my readers would expect me to be forthcoming, to be direct, to be succinct, to make points that make conclusions, not leave you to suggestion. Okay. And so unfortunately with the Bible, that's what we have. And again, people have to stop and think, would God really give us a book this confusing? You're on a mission now to find the truth. So is the next person, and so is the next person. And guess what? At the end of the day, they're going to believe exactly the same way they believe. They might pick up a couple of things. They might learn from YouTube. Oh, that's a good point I made. They didn't get that wisdom themselves. They learned from somebody else that made a better argument because it's just not taught in the Bible. Now, to me, like I said, the Trinity, these are things. And when I talk to people that believe in the Trinity, I really saw either such lies and deceit coming from them, or such a spiritual, I'll make songs. I don't know if they'll be religious songs, but I'll be around probably. It just became, to me, it became tiring. when I go on and I want to talk to people about the Bible and they're not even honest with what it says. They'll lie. No, it says three Yahwehs. Where does it say that? It just says it. Jesus says the Father is the only true God. Well, that doesn't exclude him either. See, I think really when you get down to it, you gotta be really careful, because if you're honest with yourself, there's such a deception within Christianity itself. Look at the confusion. Do you really think this is from God? You have to be willing. If you are willing and you're a seeker of truth, no matter what, you have to be willing to challenge what you believe, because eternity is final. There's no second chances. And what if all of us had become so mesmerized and so into what we're told by other people, and we've been cozied into a belief system that's so chaotic and so confusing that we're missing the forest for the trees. We're not involved with human life. We're not involved with really our neighbor. We're sectioned off. We're told not to be of the world, to basically cut ourselves off and not even welcome other believers into our home. If they don't listen to what we say, cast them out and do not even wish them good speed. We're not to even break bread with them. We're not to marry people of different faiths or even differently yoked. What does differently yoked mean? So there's 95% of the people out there that are Trinitarian. If I want to marry somebody, I'm a Christian, my choices are pretty limited, okay, as a biblical uni. My choices are pretty limited. I got to marry a biblical uni. Well, that's going to be few and far between, okay? And most of the Trinitarians don't even agree with Orthodox Trinitarianism, see? So there's a lot of rules that are in the Bible that are really ridiculous. They really keep you in a state of suspense and a state of just confusion, okay? And so, I really think in my heart of hearts that we're all getting this wrong. We've all been misled by religion, which has benefit. Okay. Christianity has benefit. I'm not saying take the Bible, throw it in the trash can, and don't read it. I'm saying there is a lot of wisdom in that Bible. In Proverbs, there's tons of good stuff in there. But it's not just in the Bible. There's lots of this in other religions, which, again, I don't see the need for me to go, I'm going to go and read I've read the Quran many times. There's no need for me to go to the Quran and read it. There's no need for me to explore Buddhism. There's no need for me to explore Hinduism, because to me, the Bible has enough necessary ingredients that I can get positive results from it. And I have the greatest teacher alive in Christ, right? So I don't need to grab all of these different religions and take what I need and borrow. No, I believe all religions are flawed, but I believe Christianity has the closest it can get to, the closest man, I will say the closest man has kind of got towards God in certain respects. Okay. So that's good. There's an advancement. You don't want to necessarily break the code. You want to take what the Bible tells you and then kind of build on that. But again, it's not for everybody. There's so many different beliefs within Christianity. It's not for everybody. And so, I encourage people to think about things, to weigh things out, to think, hey, if I'm honest with myself, the confusion that I'm in, these panels, these daily panels, the struggles, and I can't tell you how many Christians I talk to that struggle with the Bible. They struggle to fit in. They leave Christianity because of this. You don't need to leave. You just need to learn and understand that Bible that you have is a flawed book. There's nothing wrong with having a flawed book. We're flawed humans. We make mistakes. I could write a book that's got a lot of spiritual wisdom in it, and I might make some mistakes on just speaking or stories that I tell. It doesn't make these spiritual things, if they are applicable to your life and you apply them and they work for you, then hey, you grew and you learned something, and it was a spiritual thing that you benefited from the Bible. And certain people will get things from the Bible. Certain people will get things from other books that say, hey, a book could be written about why you should not cheat on your wife. And they could list all kinds of things, whether it's, the tear apart of the family, going through divorce, the financial difficulties of these, the court system. A lot of these things could be a very good detriment to you wanting to cheat on your wife. Well, I don't want to get a divorce because look at all these bad things. Okay, so you're probably, if you read this and you become kind of like convicted of not cheating, the Bible didn't convince you of this. That book did. But the Bible also says, don't covet your neighbor's wife, don't commit adultery. See, these are things that are universal, okay? So the Bible has a lot of knowledge, a lot of wisdom that you can gain from it, but it doesn't mean you need to pollute your mind with a lot of things that make you question your faith or make you spend countless hours trying to figure out. Let's say the Bible, all of that stuff is true. Okay, let's say the Bible and everything in it is true. If you want to believe in that, fine. I don't believe in it. And I think there's so many problems with the Bible. I don't know how any rational person could believe in it. But if you want to believe in it, fine. My suggestion is don't get caught up in all of these intellectual discoveries of trying to figure out the flood and read this. I would say that, okay, you read it. It doesn't matter. These things are not going to benefit you spiritually. What's going to benefit you spiritually is putting the words into action of the gospel message, trying to be a better person, try to walk as Christ walked and be righteous. Don't have these panels about once saved, always saved, and all these things. To me, like I said, I would err on the side of caution, personally. Okay. I have a hard time, again, understanding why God would give us a book so confusing that if we don't get this right, we're going to spend all eternity away from him in hell. Okay. That would be somebody that, I guess it would be par for the course, because to me, if you look at all of this calamity in the world, you look at all of this, the children being raped and murdered and slaughtered, it goes back to the Old Testament. If that's real, then God, maybe, I don't know, he's not as loving as we think. And that's a possibility. We might find in the end that God is a dictator in a way. That's a possibility. I don't agree with that, but that's a possibility. Okay. That is a very real possibility, which is kind of scary in my opinion. But yeah, I think, like I said, to me, religion has harmed more things than it's helped. We have this chaos in the Middle East because of religion. We have the commonality between Christians and Jews with Judaism and Christianity, where we are forced to defend their endless wars over there in the Middle East. We're forced to defend Israel. Every war of Israel becomes our war, and we're forced to give money to them, support them, when they have no love towards Christianity themselves. They don't care. If they could get away with just being supported by somebody else, in a heartbeat they would. But we have to support them because the Bible tells us we have to. And what a great way to write a book telling that everybody who blesses Israel will be blessed. You must support us. Well, guess what? They wrote it, and so we have to support them because they said we have to support them. Man, they really scored the big one on this one. Okay. It's kind of like you writing a book thousands of years ago telling about your family, the Eberts. You must support the Eberts because they're God's chosen, and if you do not, and then all throughout antiquity, the Eberts have been supported by everybody else because you said this, and this is the eternal book, kind of like, right? And that's, like I said, religion is the cause of all of this around the world. Fighting, killing, persecution. Look at Islam. Look at the YouTube. Like I said, all of the fighting, all the backbiting, all of the gossiping, the slander, the attacks. Nobody's showing love anymore. Like nobody shows Christ-like love. Okay. You tell a pastor you don't believe in God, he'll invite you to your home, he'll invite you to his home, show his family. You tell him that you don't believe Jesus is God, he'll basically banish you and kick you out of the church. So it's basically, You believe as we believe, and you're welcome. If you don't believe as we believe, you're not welcome and you're banished. It's not a universal love. And so, my opinion is God put us on this earth, like I said, as individuals. And it's up to us to try and live a good life, to try and live a godly life. And religion is a distraction from this. Religion keeps us, our eyes focused on trying to identify with a certain group rather than with God Himself. Sitting in the quietness of God, not have all of this confusion created by this mammoth book that's chaotic in itself, of everybody trying to grab your attention from here, trying to grab your attention from there, trying to pull you apart when you believe as you believe, and that's what you believe, but yet you're trying to satisfy everybody else. And again, nobody agrees. See? So I will never really, I've made the decision that I will never attack somebody else from this day forward, from this day to day forward. I'm never going to really call anybody else out on their belief, because to me, Christianity itself is too messy for me to take a stance on it. My goal and everybody's goal should be to advance. If you advance in your belief and you have peace and comfort in what you believe, then stick to it, because ultimately the end result is what's important. Okay. Now, following Christianity, I don't think is going to give you true peace, because you're always going to have problems, because the religion itself is problematic. It's certainly a starting point, and there's certainly things in religion that are beneficial. But again, you're always going to have division. You're always going to have contention, because nobody is going to agree with what you believe. Okay, so you can follow the Bible and you can believe in something. The problem is when you start getting around other Christians, their views are going to differ. And so you're either going to kind of like be unsettled, you're going to put up your guns and defend what you believe, because they're going to try to convince you of what they believe, and you're going to try to convince them of what you believe. And at the end of the day, it's basically, like I said, it's wasted time, because you have a path and you've read the book yourself and you're straight and narrow on that. And now you're being distracted by outside forces that believe in something different, based upon their own personality, based upon their own reading of it, based upon their preferences. Everything comes into play. And that's the danger of a book that's left open to inference. So use the Bible if it makes you walk and be pure and righteous, but I wouldn't eliminate other things to explore that make you more pure and righteous. I certainly don't advise other religions, okay, because again, religion to me is problematic. I don't advise any religion, but the Bible's benefit is it has spiritual aptitude to it. It has good teachings in it, in a book where you don't need to necessarily go and grab things from here and grab things from there. It's a centralized document that does have good stuff in it that you can benefit from, that you can advance. But don't sell yourself short. Don't cut yourself short. If you have a problem in a certain path, pray to God. Pray to God for deliverance. Pray to God for revelation. Do not depend on a book necessarily when it has so many broken promises. That's why a lot of people have walked away from God, because of the Bible. The biblical promises, lay hands on the sick and they will be healed. And you've got this little child, and you believe with all your heart that God is going to heal that sick little baby. He's there, and you're a Christian family, and you have all the faith in the world. And guess what? That baby dies 99.9% of the time brutally as you pray and cry out to God. And then you lose your faith and walk away, as many do. No, God's not going to interact, and it's proven. If the Bible was true, these prayers would be answered. We would be able to test. Thomas questioned Christ. He wasn't even alive. Prove it to me. Show me. Unless I put my hands in your side, I will not believe. And Christ gave him validation that he was resurrected. There's nothing wrong with questioning God and demanding proof. Demanding proof. But see, today, they condition you to not demand proof because the pastors know that if you demand proof, you're not going to get the answers, and you're not going to get the answers that you want, and you're going to question things. They do not want you to question faith because people have made careers and prop themselves up as teachers based upon this, the Bible and the lies that are taught in the Bible in certain ways. Okay, you should be able to collectively go and heal children in the hospitals as a true testimony of God's reverent love and his faith. What a testimony that would be to the countless people around the world who want to believe in the gospel, to see little children in the hospital crying out for deliverance and mercy. Instead, they receive chemo and drugs and painkillers where God is absent. No healing takes place. Study after study prove it doesn't work. But we're promised this in the Bible, and there's always excuses. Well, I don't believe God heals. He doesn't work. The Spirit doesn't work like it used to. And see, that's your interpretation. When I read the Bible, it tells me they will be healed. But again, a lot of Christians are excuse makers. They want to believe in a book so bad, they'll go out of their way to make excuses for it to where it becomes a ridiculous assertion no matter what they say. Oh, well, yeah, he did send those bears, but I don't want to believe they were little children. They must have been evil, or they were throwing rocks, or they were clear men. They were gang. Yeah, that's it. And they're always making excuses about what's taught in the Bible. Well, the children aren't healed because we don't know. God's ways are not our ways. It's not their time yet. There's always a reason for everything. Well, the Bible promises you things. And if Thomas demanded Christ show him things to believe, and Christ honored that, then we too, like doubting Thomas, should have promises verified. Okay. If I'm going to put my faith and trust into something, then I better believe it's true, and I better have signs. It's not a problem for us to demand things. If Thomas asked, other people asked for proof. Like I said, the problem is these things do not add up and they don't work. So the pastor will tell you, well, you shouldn't be doing that because that's just very arrogant. That's very arrogant to demand God. Don't put God to the test like that. Well, yeah, because it will never work in a bazillion years. They could take every pastor in the churches in the world, every one of them, put them into a hospital and have all of them have the power in there, and not a single child would be healed. Not a single child will be healed. You never see any of this around the world with people being healed. It's always these vague little stories about, and then you find out it never happened, or the kid had chemo for 6 years and he had this new thing. Now, I don't deny that miracles do happen, but it's not the way the Bible promises you. Okay. There's many spiritual things that God will heal and God will deliver. They're not the way the Bible promises you. Okay. They just are not. And so the promises do not work in the Bible. The canonization process was a problem. The forgeries, the errors, all of these things amount to a man-made doctrine. And that's okay, because it's mankind's, again, testimonies of their faith. If we all took our testimonies of our paths and the way that God's worked in our lives and put these into a book, that they would be great testimonies, but they wouldn't necessarily work for everybody. Everybody's got their own path, right? Everybody's got their own path. And so, I think this has been an eye-opener for me. And having all of this knowledge in the past about my religion and what I believed, it's kind of, it comes kind of like, I don't know. It kind of brings me sadness because it was a lot of wasted time and really kind of destructive, because I see a lot of people doing the same thing I do, attacking other religions It's basically attack. You see video after video attacking. And I'm sorry, I apologize to all the people that I offended or I made videos against, kind of being obnoxious and going against their faith and stuff. I regret it now. I don't, that was not a good approach. It just, but I was blinded by religion. I was blinded by religion. And I thought that God would be on my side if I attack other people and draw them to the truth. No, it's just basically God does not like any of this. God does not like me making a video attacking a Trinitarian's position because, again, that person is trying to seek God out. And that belief they have is the belief they have by the study they've done, by the accumulation of reading they've done, in their best attempt at trying to be, you would think you give them the benefit of the doubt, that's their best attempt at trying to be a Christian. But by you going in and attacking them on your faith because you believe your faith, even as complicated as it is itself, is better than theirs, and you're going to take that haughty attitude, which I had, and attack their faith, you're doing more harm than benefit. Because that person might lose their faith. They might stumble. They might not want to go to church the next week because of what you've implanted in their mind. Now they might start doubting God himself. They might start doubting a lot of the things they've learned. And see, to me, it's a journey on everybody's level. Everybody has their own journey. When you start attacking a person's faith spiritually, you could dismantle a lot of things that they've accumulated by their own gain. Okay. So I'll never do that. Somebody wants to believe in the oneness belief. They want to believe Jesus is Yahweh, whatever works for you. To me, it's all fantasy anyway. The Bible, in a lot of ways, believe in all this stuff. It's mankind's, Jesus coming down. He's going to be the king and the ruler and Lord. And a lot of these things, to me, I don't believe anymore. I just don't believe anymore. Could they be true? Sure. But there's just too many problems when I look at all the evidence. I don't weigh anything out. Okay, I'm not cut off. I'm not saying, well, that's not true. Could Jesus be the Lord and Savior? Do I deny Jesus as my Lord and Savior? No, I don't, because why would I? If it's true, it's true. I'm not going to say I reject it. No. Is Jesus my Lord and Savior? Sure, that's what the Bible says. I have no problem accepting that. Do I believe it with all my heart and conviction? Not when I read the Bible and see all the problems in it. I cannot place my trust and faith in a flawed book that's got my back, especially when I read things and they don't add up and God turns into a contradictory monster. I have problems with that. But I do not reject things like out of viciousness or just out of anger. Okay. I'm not going to go against somebody else and try to steer somebody else away from the Bible, is what I'm saying. I'm not going to pop on live streams and talk about how I believe the Bible is false and you shouldn't follow it. I do make a case of why I believe the Bible is false because I want people to know. But that's my live stream. I'm not going to go on somebody else's live stream and try to dismantle their faith, because to me, the most important thing in life is to get as holy and pure as you possibly can. And if your belief in Christianity is settled and you believe with all your heart and you have true peace and it keeps you walking in righteousness and it keeps you away from sin and it keeps you away from doing all these things, then that's great. That's where you need to be, in my opinion. That's where you need to be. But somebody else might not have that same mindset as you do. They might follow the same book. They do not feel convicted and spiritual the same way because I don't believe God's got that same path for them, because people are different. People think differently. We're not all put into the same box. That's why people go around. They find things in churches that fit them because, again, I believe God is leading them to certain ways to try and get them into a belief system. It doesn't matter really what it is, as long as you're spiritual, I would think, to follow and try to be more holy. And that's why I think Christianity, like I said, has more cred, because it gets a lot more right. You have a teacher that's not, marrying an adolescent, a little child, and and having all these marriages and stuff. I love Muslims, but I think Muslims just got they got their work cut out for them when it comes to Muhammad and the Quran. They just you cannot live in peace and love, and when you have a warlord as your prophet. Okay, I know Moses and all these others were warlords and other things, but when you have the ultimate teacher who you should be, I'm not trying to be like Moses. Okay, I'm not trying to be like David. I'm not trying to be like these people. You're trying to be like Jesus, who was not a warlord. Okay, he was a peaceful, loving rabbi, and that's your example. But when you have somebody like Muhammad who shows up 600 years later, who's a warlord, and he marries 11 women, he's just going around all his wives and stuff. Man, I feel for Muslims, because you cannot have when you believe that the most perfect man was a guy who married a 9-year-old girl and had sex, or married a 6-year-old girl and had sex with her when she was 9, and he had all these different wives and stuff. Your thinking about a perfect man becomes distorted. Okay, Christ and Muhammad were not even in the same league, and that's why a lot of Muslims don't want you to compare Muhammad and Jesus, because there's a problem. There's a contradiction. They know that Jesus is a better role model, but Muhammad's supposed to be the final prophet. Again, everybody has their religion. Everybody has this religion. And Waraka, who was the Catholic mystic, who was a cousin of Muhammad, I believe, talked him into being the final prophet of the Arabs. So another religion spawned off of whatever. Okay. And if we could eliminate all of these religions and just try to get back to uniformity of trying to, hey, the person in the line next to you, treat them like a brother in humanity, because you do not want to do anything that's going to disrupt your spiritual path. You're not going to want to do anything that's going to unsettle them or get them to be angry, because, again, that's a distraction from godliness. That's a distraction from trying to be pure. You encourage people to be pure. And so when you see somebody saying something bad to somebody else, that should be a problem in all of our minds. We should try to rectify it, not to ignore it, not to just try to identify in Christianity only. Oh, they're Muslim, these Muslims or whatever. I feel sorry for the people trapped in religion, because now I've been given a new perspective. I no longer see them as rivals. I no longer see them as people I need to convert. I see them as people who are ardently seeking for truth, who are trying to do their best job at that point in their life on trying to cling on to something that has substance that leads them to godliness. And that's the truth. That's why all of us should be compassionate and empathetic in people's journey towards trying to be righteous and pure. Okay. Everybody's got their own path, and this is not a perfect world. We're not given clear commandments in the Bible. We're not given clear commandments in the Quran. We're not given all these clear commandments. So you cannot expect people to have the same belief that you do when that same book teaches many different things, depending on how you read it. So my perception of people has completely been transformed, because and it's been enlightening, because I realize the devastation that religion causes. It keeps us locked into division. Okay, it keeps us marginalized. Jehovah's Witnesses got their own camp. Oh, they're a cult. Oh my gosh, they believe Jesus is Michael. And then you got the Mormons. Oh my gosh, the tablets and all these things, and everybody's got their own. Well, Christianity isn't any better. We got lots and lots of problems with the faith and the Trinity and all these things. I mean, come on. You've got the Catholics who are Trinitarian and the Eastern Orthodox who are Trinitarian, and they've got a Trinity that you got the Mormons who don't believe in the Trinity. Jehovah's Witnesses don't believe in the Trinity. They've got this. They got Jesus is Michael. I mean, it's a disaster. Okay. And so all you see now are debates and debates and debates from the same book that's open to interpretation. Okay. And you might change a couple people's minds, but at the end of the day, when thousands and thousands and thousands of hours have been spent, you will have done nothing but waste your time and you will probably be farther away from God than you were before. What better time could be spent of taking a walk in nature, spending time with your family, spending time with your husband, spending time with your wife, going and painting a neighbor's house, or volunteering? To me, I think God, if we took our resources and pulled them together as people, instead of marginalizing ourselves into these small denominations that really make no difference, they help us out in incremental amounts, and they benefit our own little group, but they don't benefit humanity. And that's the problem. Is I think that's why God doesn't work in the way that he should now, because we've marginalized ourselves. I believe we have the power of healing and things as a unified body of people. That's why prayers work, I think, around the world when people pray, because we're all spiritual people. And that spiritual aptitude we have in us can reach other people because we do have spiritual energy in us that's connected by God. But when we fraction ourselves off, everybody's praying from their own belief system. They're trying to convert others. Like if I see somebody, I'm a Christian, my main goal is to save his soul. I don't want him to go to hell and burn forever. I want to save his soul. And so I'm going to try to convert him to Christianity. And some of these missionaries would not even feed the Africans when they were over in Africa unless they converted to Catholicism or whatever. That's diabolical, in my opinion. Okay. Well, we'll feed you, but you must convert to Christianity first, and then we'll give you some food. So I challenge people, and like I said, that's your journey. I'm not going to insult you because you want to continue to do things, but I really think these panels are more about you, and I've been guilty of it too myself. These panels are more about you, talking about your faith, and spending time talking and basically kind of like get together sessions, than they are really a spiritual manifestation of something that's going to be positive. Okay. Because the same panels, all of these people getting together, talking about the same book, they really do nothing in the end to advance somebody spiritually, because your own little group is talking among your own little group. How about these people actually go out into the world and do something positive and spread the message that way? You're going to reach people better if you go out and volunteer and say, hey, I'm going to open up my own business, or I'm going to help paint. I'm going to gather money and donate my time to help an old lady, or volunteer at a hospital with orphan kids or whatever. Something that would be beneficial. That time, I think God would honor far more than the thousands of hours we spend on YouTube fighting with each other, Muslims and Jews and Eastern Orthodox and Catholics, all these thumbnails. And like I said, I've been probably some of the worst myself, taking a lot of time and just attacking Trinitarians, and I regret it. I regret the time that I spent, because it really got nowhere. It didn't benefit me spiritually. The reason why is it's a byproduct of the Bible, again, because everybody has a different faith, and you're trying to push your faith. They're trying to push their faith. Everybody's at odds with each other. Everybody's fighting. Everybody's fighting with each other, and you have the same book in front of you. If that's not a red flag, I don't know what is. Okay. Again, you have to think about what's being proposed here. You have a God who's perfect, a God who's all-knowing, supposedly, and yet he couldn't finalize a book that is not open to interpretation so wildly that same book, instead of uniformity, brings division. It brings chaos. It brings disorder where we are spending more of our time trying to figure out what the Bible even says than putting what the Bible tells us to do into practice. Instead of actually going out and living a Christian life, I'm spending all of my time trying to figure out how this even makes sense. And the next person is over, and the next person is over. And that's why you see the 50,000-mile stare in a 30-foot room in the churches, because they don't understand it. They read the Bible, man, this is so confusing. We better get the pastor to explain it. That pastor will disagree with the pastor down the road. And that's the danger of allowing your eternal spiritual destination to be governed by people and a book that is plagued with. When you turn away from that and say, okay, God, I got to be real with you. I got to be real with you. I have a lot of problems with the Bible. I got a lot of problems with religion in general. I want to just basically quash all of these voices and all of these disturbances from me. And I want to do the best job as I possibly can, to be as godly as I possibly can, to be as pure as I possibly can. And by engaging on these panels and these divisions, this is not allowing me to continue that way. Do you think God's okay with us fighting all the time and making fun of other people like I used to do, and laughing and mocking at people and belittling them and maybe cursing at them? No. I think we're all going to be judged very harshly on that day when we stand before our God and Creator, and we've allowed religion to pollute our minds and drawn us away from each other. That's where judgment's really going to happen. I think a lot of people are going to regret all of the effort they put in individually to destroy somebody else's faith, when your faith is based upon a book that's plagued with problems yourself. That's hypocritical. And so I had a lot of awakening. I had a lot of revelation that I was like, I slowly had it brought onto me about when I started making videos, I started becoming bothered by them. I started becoming bothered by them, and I started going, why am I attacking somebody's faith when I don't even have a church, really? The biblical Unitarian faith is a mess. I don't have a church. The Bible talks about having pastors and having bishops and deacons and all these things that are fluid and a standing church. Biblical Unitarianism doesn't have it. Oneness believers really don't have it. If you're being honest, the churches that have it are the Orthodox churches, the Catholic churches, and the Eastern Orthodox churches. These are the long-standing churches. Whether you agree that they were compromised or not, the fact remains is, historically, tracing back through the lineage, these are the earliest churches that are established, that have remained throughout. Okay. Now, you can disagree with the tenets of the faith, and you can disagree with what they teach, but the fact remains is, these are the most fundamental truths that align with the Bible, that you do have an established church. Now, do I believe the Catholic Church and the Orthodox Church are the true churches? I don't, but I see with religion now, I take a different glance. I have no problem believing that these would be the earliest churches, because to me, the Bible itself is a man-made doctrine, and that those are put together by men, and I would have a lot easier time believing in it. There's certainly no Unitarian churches. You might have a couple here, a couple there. Do you really want me to believe that God's going to come for his church and the body of Christ? We have billions of people already established in these churches. And a lot of these churches do a lot of good. They do a lot of great things. The Catholic churches do a lot of great things. I know a lot of Catholic people that are great people. I know a lot of Protestants that go to these churches. They're great people. Okay, because I really believe that within these churches are individuals who are trying to find truth. And they've latched onto churches and belief systems that are flawed, in my opinion, but every religion is flawed. Every religion is flawed. So, I think it's a stepping stone for a person if they're trying to find a path to God and they're lost. How do you find it? If you do not have spirituality in the first place and you don't know where to begin, then you have people who have a little bit of inside knowledge. You have a book that will give you a jump start that can basically get your mind started on things that are of faith. And there's a lot of benefit that comes with it. You have community, you have fellowship, you have a place where you can go, you can grow. See, but to me, I couldn't go along with the Catholic Church because I know too much. Sometimes ignorance is bliss. I know too much. I've studied too much. I've looked into the Trinity and all these things. I could not, in true faith, sit in a Catholic church and just become a Catholic. I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it because to me, I just could not accept the Trinity. I could not believe in it. There's just too many problems. And so I think the happiest people are those, because I know a lot of them, that don't even question the Trinity. They've never given a second thought. They've never dug into. They don't know about Hebrews 1:8, the variants there. They don't know about all the variants. And they do not care because to them, they have peace. And I really believe that a lot, see, that's the sad thing about this is religion can really destroy your relationship with God in many ways, I think, because when you are a child in religion, when you focus more on the spiritual things of God and you're not getting intellectual, you don't question things. Let's say you become a member of the Catholic Church and you don't question things. You don't question the Catholic Church. You just go along with what they say. Now, you might not be being told the truth, but and it's just like it says, it's a disaster. Okay, it's a disaster. So there's no real way out of this. But I'm just saying that if you're a newbie and you buy into it, because a lot of Catholics are oblivious to reality, but there's such and Protestants too, and Eastern Orthodox, but they're so ignorant to what actually is being taught. They just go along with what they're told, and they're okay with it, and they find peace in it because they're ignorant of what reality really is. But they do find peace in it, and they focus more on the spiritual things of the Bible. They can go to church, and I've been to these churches. Very few times they teach the Trinity. They hardly ever speak about it. Most of the time, it's about purification, trying to live righteous. All these beneficial things, having a have a community and all these things. That's great. And a couple of times they'll mention the Trinity, they'll teach on it, but it's few and far between. And so they become more spiritual this way, rather than somebody like me who's spent most of the time not growing spiritually necessarily, but growing intellectually. I know all the stuff about this, that, and the other, because again, when you're tearing apart a doctrine you believe is false, you're going to get into the nitty-gritty and get into everything. But the trade-off is spirituality and knowledge versus just becoming basically you're ignorant and you focus more on the spirituality side of things. So these people, they have no clue about the Hebrew or the Greek, no clue about the variants. They would be shocked if you actually told them, because their focus is not on that. Their focus is on the spiritual things of the Bible, the most important thing, okay, to them. And sometimes ignorance is bliss because you're not aware of the problems. If I didn't know about all these problems, I could probably go into a Catholic church and just believe it. And see, that's a danger when they run into somebody who's knowledgeable about things. They tell them, no, that's actually a forgery. That's not there. And then their world gets shaken because now this innocent person, really, or kind of innocent, ignorant to reality, is kind of shook because they've never looked at things through a different lens. They've always just believed what they were told is true. And see, so that's to me, again, that's more proof that religion is man-made. Okay. So, I don't know. I think people need to follow their own path. But for me, I apologize to people I attack, like religion-wise. I thought I was doing a good thing, really, to be honest with you. I thought, when everybody thinks that God's on their side and you have the truth, then you can go against other religions and you really think that you can do it because to them their religion is antichrist. To them, to you, their religion is satanic. And see, but again, even within the biblical Unitarian spheres, nobody agrees. So I can't even have a conversation with people that I know within biblical Unitarianism, and they agree with me. The same book, the same belief system. Some believe completely different than I do. So what is it? Again, things started opening up when I started just thinking and using common sense. Take a step back. Just because the Bible tells you something doesn't mean you need to believe it. You need to be open to the fact that you could be being misled by a book put together by men that's going to impede your spiritual journey with God. Think about it. That's a possibility. I'm not trying to destroy anybody's faith, okay? Nor would I want somebody to tell me, oh, especially when you have a Bible telling me that I'm going to go to hell, I'm not saved, I don't have Jesus. That's coming from circular reasoning from a book that's plagued with errors, okay? Again, I cannot put all of my faith and trust into a book plagued with errors when I know how God works. I know God would never give us a book like that and then tell us if we do not get everything right, we're going to go to hell forever. Do I believe now that Muslims are going to hell? No, I don't. Do I believe Hinduism and all these other, I don't know. I haven't really explored a lot of these religions. Sometimes they're kind of like satanic in a lot of ways. But do I believe Muslims are going to hell? No, I don't. I believe that it depends. It depends on within Christianity also. I believe that a lot of Christians, I don't, what is hell? What is hell? Is that a man-made concept? Because in Judaism, hell wasn't a place like of eternal torment. It was basically like the grave. There will be like ashes on the soles of their feet. So much was changed within Christianity. Satan was not he was not somebody that was going against God. He was basically like a judge, an advocate, like somebody that would go against and go up there and basically convict you, but he wouldn't be somebody that was going to be attacking you with evil spirits in your bedroom at night. Okay, that's not what ancient Judaism believed. So much within Judaism and Christianity is a departure. Okay, so much hell, Satan, a lot of these things did not exist in Judaism, and they borrowed it and transformed it into Christianity. The Christian religion is completely different, really, than the God of the Jews in the Old Testament. The God of the Jews in the Old Testament, if you actually are not brainwashed and you actually care about, hey, if I find out something I don't agree. See, the problem with most Christians is they do not want to find anything out that contradicts them because they want to stay within Christianity. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm just saying that if you start exploring things, you will find out that much of Christianity today is an invention. It just is. It doesn't align with the Old Testament at all. But again, what are you going to do? You're going to give up Christianity and throw your hands up in the air and say, well, where am I going to go now? That's the problem with trying to cling onto a religion of man-made faith instead of clinging on to religion or a relationship rather with God. When you've allowed your walk from the beginning to be categorized and to be structured based upon a religion and a book that's flawed, then you really have you don't really have an individual relationship with God. You might think you do, and you could, but it's being influenced by all of these outside sources. You're being pushed around, you're being confused, you're being misled, you're being told things that are not true. And so I really think that all of us, like the Amazon and all these people that were on earth before, Christianity actually came around, they're not going to hell. They had their own belief in God, and they were not, they were trying to, I guess, walk individually as clear as they possibly could. Then you have these man-made belief systems with Zeus and Hercules and all of these Greek gods coming around. That's what happens when you don't have a personal relationship with your creator, spiritual creator. You start objectifying God and trying to put him into a box of your own liking, and trying to uh, you know create stones and statues and all these things about God, trying to fit him into something that you can see. And so from the beginning of time, we've all tried to seek God out, and that's what you see today. That's the religion inquisitor is you're inquisitive about God, you want to seek God out, and so people bounce around picking your faith. And pretty much where you were born is the religion you adapt to. If you were born over in India, you might be Hindu. If you're born over in Iran, you might be Islamic. That's just the way things are. Your family, you're born into religion, you take on certain traditions and stuff. And depending on your makeup and depending on the experiences in life, you might shift, you might change, you might go to a religion that calls you out, or you follow better with. A lot of women are leaving Christianity and becoming Muslim over in the UK. And I really believe that's because, again, Christianity is problematic. Okay. It's a mammoth book with a mammoth amount of problems. Islam is more structured, and women find sometimes more peace and structure. They like structure, it governs them. When you have the American woman today trying to be competitive with body shape, trying to be competitive with how they look, they find a lot of peace in Islam because they get to wear the hijab. They're not so much on performance on how they look, because Muslims don't push. You don't see too many Muslim women at the beach wearing a thong or a G-string. Not in their countries, you don't. Okay, so you look at a lot of Muslims who take the Quran seriously, and they look at the Western culture and how perverted it is. Look at our women. The men cannot control the women. The women are out of control. The men do not know how to be men. They don't know how to control a woman. The women do not want to accept any teachings from men. They're on their own. And so it's not any wonder you have all this chaos. And so there's something about Islam that the Bible has, but the Bible doesn't force as much. Okay. As a Christian man, you should be authoritative, and you should be governing your wife or your girlfriend or whatever. But you should have a wife or a girlfriend that wants to be led. The problem today is men do not know how to be men, and women do not want to be women. They want to be equal to a man. A woman is not equal to a man in the sense of physical strength, in the sense of responsibility, in the sense of just having the inner desire to achieve certain things. A woman is equal to a man in humanity and as a person, sure. A woman is not better than a man. A man is not better than a woman as an individual. I would never put a woman down thinking that I'm a better individual than her. However, I am stronger usually. I can't think of any woman that's. I'm sure there are anomalies, but you can train and out train, and. So generally, a woman is the weaker sex, and they should be treated as such, not as putting them down or treating them garbage, as actually treating them like putting them above yourself. That's the problem that people are missing today. Is women have become like men. So men do not respect women the same way they used to respect them. They treat them as equals. Like, you go and open your own door, or a woman will say, well, I don't need you to open it. I'll open it myself. Women have destroyed chivalry, and they've also destroyed a man wanting to take care of them. A man's not really going to want to take care of a woman today because there's too much on the line. Women will go after another guy easily and leave the guy in the dust and take half his stuff. A guy who's worked his whole life to make a fortune for himself or whatever gets it taken away because a woman gets cold feet or whatever and wants to go and get a divorce and marry another man. They're not the same women as they used to be. Okay. And the men are not the same either. Okay. The world's changed. And that's because the roles have changed. Islam, they're more rigid, sometimes a little bit too harsh, but you don't have these problems like women wearing thongs on the beach and wearing like these clothes that that men are very visual. Okay. Men think about things like all day long, sexual stuff. And when a woman starts dressing that way, men, especially men in these cultures that haven't been desensitized to it, a lot of them freak out. A lot of them can't handle it. Okay. Now, now when a woman says, well, I should be able to wear what I want, not be raped. Sure. I should be able to walk down Harlem and Compton with $5,000 in my hand at 3 o'clock in the morning and not get robbed, but I'll probably be robbed. Okay. So if you start dressing like a hoe, then you shouldn't blame anybody really but yourself if something bad happens to you. I'm just saying, just because you think you can get away with something doesn't mean bad things won't happen to you. That's unfortunately reality. Okay. And so, the problem with Christianity is we have a book that very few people follow. It's so chaotic and so confusing. Nobody really understands it. So really people don't take it seriously. And so, the religions we have are chaotic. It's a disaster. And so our society is slowly crumbling because people don't follow the Bible, even as the Bible as it is. Even as the Bible as it is. Men are not raising men, they're raising kids. Women are not staying home to raise their kids. They're working, they're advancing themselves in career. They're being misled by, the problem with women and men is men, in order to achieve a level of success, like if a man wanted to go out and have a lot of women, he would need to be successful in some right. He would need to bring something to the table. He would need to be very attractive, be very famous, be very rich for women to flock to him, because men have to earn things. Women don't have to. Women just show up. Okay. A woman can be not attractive and she'll have 5 or 6, 7 guys waiting to try and hook up with her. That's just how it is. Women can move on from a guy to another guy within 5 minutes. You can find another boyfriend. Men have a harder time. Because, again, women do not really have to bring anything to the table. A woman can be just brain dead and just ignorant and pretty, and she'll get lots of guys. Guys, they're not going to have the same type of favor. Okay. A guy can be working at McDonald's, broke. A woman's not going to give him the time of the day usually. A woman works at McDonald's, she's attractive. Guys don't really care. Guys don't care. Guys are actually kind of turned off more if a woman is very successful, high rising, and makes more money than him, because then his idea of trying to be a leader is put into question. It's not that the guy is necessarily insecure. It's just that biologically it's seen as she's above him, and a man naturally wants to be a provider and a protector. When a man does not need to provide for a woman, then it becomes like his protectionness kind of goes down. It's degraded. Okay. Kind of like a woman desires a man who's stronger than her, who's taller. Biologically, it's not superficial. There's a biological necessity for that, because women are inferior normally when it comes to physical strength. So they want a man to protect them. Okay. And so the problem with society is we're trying to put everything equal. Well, a woman shouldn't go after a man because of his money. Well, biological women are, because women usually go after men because of their money. Biologically, because they provide and they're able to be to provide better than somebody who can't. So it's not that necessarily the woman's a gold digger. It's just that's how a woman thinks, out of necessity. Okay. And men desire beauty because naturally, if a woman's beautiful, the man is going to probably have more attractive offspring, and that offspring, if it's attractive, will give a greater chance for that offspring to have future offspring. It's a biological process. So there is superficial things built into it, but it's out of necessity in many cases. Women are attractive. People choose attractive partners because that gives your genes a chance to attract other future prospects and continue your bloodline, rather than choose a very unattractive partner, where your kids might have a harder time finding a suitable mate, and they might be single. I mean, a lot of these things come into play. But the Bible spells a lot of these things out. And so there is a lot of truth. But again, it's not that the Bible invented these things. These things have been around forever. Okay? These things have been around forever. They're universal in many faiths. But the Bible does have a good list of things. And if you follow them, then you can have, a spiritual, fulfilled life. So I think I rambled enough. I think, with me, though, I really regret attacking people's faith, because from now on, I'm not going to. I'm not going to care if you want to believe Jesus is Yahweh, you want to believe in the Trinity, you want to believe in all these things. It really doesn't matter to me. See, I was changed like overnight, really, kind of in a way, because it's kind of like my eyes have been open. Like, it's hard to it's hard to explain, but it's kind of like you see all of the wasted time and all of the fighting and all of the division, and you just are sad. Like, I don't have any desire to attack the Trinity anymore. I don't have any desire to try and prove somebody wrong. I don't have any desire to debate somebody. I don't have any desire to try and destroy somebody's faith. Because again, if I'm honest with myself, the Bible has too many problems for me to believe that I have the truth in the Bible. Okay. It's not clear. Now, again, do I believe the Bible teaches there's one God, the Father? Yes, absolutely. But there are too many problems in the Bible for me to take it as God's word. I believe the Bible was compiled by men, put together by men, in an earnest attempt to seek God out. And they got quite a bit right, but they got a lot wrong. Okay. And a lot of the Bible, the Torah, was written by Jews who wanted to preserve their country and their nation, or Israel. And so they wrote it that way. If you come against us, God will attack you. God's a God of war, and he'll come against you. Of course, the Jews were like that. Just like today, the Jews are God's chosen people, and they still believe the same way. Okay. But they were under occupation for a long time. So, I think there's a lot of spiritual things in the Bible. I think it's a lot of good. But you have to understand why some people find peace in oneness. They'll die oneness. They'll live their entire lives as a oneness believer. Do I believe now they're going to go to hell because they got it wrong? No, I don't. I believe that oneness believers and Trinitarians and Unitarians and everybody that's in the same Bible has got an equal chance at going to heaven. Okay, because it depends on their heart and what they're seeking. Because again, it's a flawed book written by man, and you are reading it based upon your own personality, based upon your own observations, based upon what you've come to understand, how God's spoken to you. And if you believe that's the truth and that causes you to live in purpose and try to be a better person, then that's your path. Great. But as an outsider now and looking into it, I think it's insanity, because you've got all of these different mixtures. It's like I've been given a step back, and I'm looking at all these people now talking on these panels. And I'm looking, okay, I got the same Bible. I got a oneness believer. I got 3 of them over there. I got this other believer who believes, in he's a binitarian. Another one that's a JW, one that's a biblical Unitarian, on the same panel, talking about the same Bible. And they've all got different interpretations of it. Now, this is a problem. Because if you have a book, like I was saying before, that was authorized by God and nobody agrees, then you failed as a God, as a prophet, to articulate your position clearly, unambiguously. You just gave it open interpretations where people could, thousands of years later, still be debating it. That is a bad teaching, in my opinion. That's a bad teaching, in my opinion. And again, the reason why is because it's man made. Man is fallible, man makes errors. The best observational time at the time, the best way that they could articulate it was through this lens. But now, progressively, we understand they didn't do that great of a job. They could have done better. Now, I could, like I said, I could do a better job penning down the simple truths, taking the statements they have and expounding upon them. I could take a passage like John 17:3, and I would say, eternal life is to know you, Father, as the only true God, meaning that there is no other God but you, a single individual, the Father, and only you are God, nobody else. And to know Jesus as the Christ, who's not God, he's the Messiah, things like that. Okay, you could eliminate things where you would have no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Baptism, again, you must be baptized to enter the kingdom. If you are not baptized the way Jesus was, in the name of the Father and the Son of the Holy Spirit, like the baptismal formula says, then you will not enter the kingdom. And this is why you break it down. So be sure to be baptized. Hey, there's no debate now. You have a clear teaching. Once saved, always saved. Yes, once you are saved by God's grace and Christ's blood, you are into the kingdom forever. You will never lose your salvation. You will always be welcomed. You have an eternal promise in the kingdom, and do not let anybody tell you otherwise. Wow, what a clear teaching. I could say in a couple of sentences, in a couple of minutes, that would eliminate any possibility of confusion. You wouldn't have these debates because you would have these clear statements. I'm sure somebody would disagree, but you would have clear statements that are not open to interpretation. Okay, the dietary restrictions. Until Jesus comes back, you are not to eat any of these foods. The law stays in effect. Do not touch them. They're unclean to not only the Jews, but to you, because you're grafted into Israel. They're not only spiritual, it's necessary you do not touch these foods, and you make and make a case for it. You can eliminate all of these uncertainties that clearly plague Christianity today, but we don't have that. So I'm sorry, I just cannot go along with a book. And like I said, it's my personal journey. It's your personal journey. And I don't think you as a person should attack somebody else's faith because they believe differently when your same Bible is a confusing mess. It's hypocritical. You should be humble enough to admit that the Bible has problem. The problem is when people become very prideful and very arrogant, believing the Bible is flawless and only their interpretation is the truth. Now they're going to take this emboldened by God and they're going to go out and attack other people's faith. My God versus your God. You have to repent and believe in the gospel. It's just a way of using God as a battering ram. And I think at the end, all of us, if we've done that and we haven't repented, are going to answer for it. Okay. Attacking Muslims. Let them believe what they want. I mean, you preach to them out of love and kindness and go your way. That's how you do it. Going against them and attacking them, like I used to do a long time ago, is not godly. It's not going to benefit you. Going back and forth day in and day out, battling them is more of an ego thing than it is a truth thing. You should not want to insult anybody, really. You should not insult anybody based upon their faith because, again, they're trying to find truth the same way you are trying to find truth. And you didn't have this truth probably the same way that you do now. You could have been a Trinitarian years ago. So you learned and grew out of it. And some people have a journey to grow out of certain things, to grow in wisdom. And by attacking people, you're either going to, man, that Christian was really rude. I don't want to be a Christian. Look at how they treat me or how they do this or that. I mean, look at how Christians mostly treat people. Very nasty. Go on YouTube. Look at how people, you got Sam Shimon, you got God Logic, you got Jay Dyer. All these people are diabolical. They treat people like garbage. And that's the Christian, pretty much. They go to YouTube now. You don't learn from the pastors and churches, really. I think the pastors and churches are probably obviously a better place to learn than YouTube. The problem is the churches do not teach the Trinity. So a lot is missing. And so a lot of people are hungering for this truth that they believe is the truth. So they go to YouTube. They spend most of their time in apologetics. They spend most of their time listening, and then they want to be apologists themselves. They think it's really cool. They can take this and use it as a way to attack other people's faiths. But if you go to a church, they probably will never talk about the Trinity because they're not familiar with it really, or they're not comfortable with it. They avoid it. Okay, but they do teach on other things that are more important. So you're going to get more of apologetic side on YouTube, but you get very little spiritual nourishment. Notice they don't ask you, how are you doing? Do you need help? What's your life been like? Can I help you? It's mostly getting up and talking about your faith, talking about what you believe, and attacking others. It's never about unification, trying to help people out spiritually, or, hey, I don't want to be rude to this Muslim because the Muslim's a person. He's struggling like everybody else is struggling. That's what he believes. I'll respect it. I'll respect what he believes because that's his journey. Like, if you start attacking somebody and get them off the path, I really think that's a sin. I really think that's a danger. Okay, even if they're a Muslim. Well, we have to tell them about the gospel. We have to tell them about Jesus and all these things. Well, you can tell them all you want, and you can make a good case for it, and then just leave it. Okay? You don't need to kind of like tell them all these things about Muhammad and all the ways that Jesus is better. You just let God work in their lives if that's the truth. Okay. But you can't be somebody who's sold on Christianity when Christianity itself is a disaster. Okay. It's a disaster. And you saying that I have the truth, I'm a Christian, doesn't matter jack squat. The second person down the line disagrees with you and they're oneness. And the person down the line disagrees with you and they're Trinitarian. They have the same book you do. So, you got to drop your ego a little bit, humble yourself, and realize the world does not revolve around your interpretation of the Bible, nor mine. Okay. So I think that's about it. I'll probably do videos in the future, maybe on not attacking religion necessarily. I might talk about the dangers of it, but more of a spiritual. I'm not into tarot cards, and I'm not into Unitarian Universalism, where I think everybody has a truth and go grab. I think it's dangerous. I don't experiment with Islam. I don't experiment with all these other faiths. It's Christianity to me. I'll dabble. If I want to go to religion, I'll go to the Bible, because to me, the Bible is the most advanced book we have when it comes to religion. There's no need. Like, I can't grab something from Islam that isn't already taught in the Bible. Okay. I just can't. To me, Islam is a departure from a lot of these things. Okay. So I don't need to go into Buddhism and Judaism and all these other things to have truth. I think the Bible is as good as we got. As good as we got, as flawed as it is, I think it's as good as we got. Doesn't mean I open the Bible and I go, okay, I'm going to believe that talking snake. Oh, yes, that happened. The flood. Yes. Oh, yes. I realize a lot of these things are stories. They're nonsensical. But it doesn't mean that God can't use stories and mankind can't use stories to try and emphasize a point, to get a point across. And it doesn't mean they actually believe that. They could have believed these things at the time. And that's true. They could have believed these things at the time. It doesn't mean that their voices weren't more credible, but does it mean that I believe them? No, I don't. See, so a lot of these things they believed in the old days are just not true today. But that's how they discerned it back then, because, again, these were through the eyes of fallible men who tried to understand God, tried to have God reach out to them. And no doubt that he did. Okay, God's going to reach out to people in all kinds of capacities. And like I said, it doesn't mean that certain things in the Bible could have happened. I have no problem with that, but I'm not going to sell myself into believing in a book 100% that everything is true. It's not. And once you understand that, then these debates should be secondary. Who cares? Like, okay, you're going to debate your opinion versus their opinion. Is that really going to transform your spiritual life? No, it's not. It's just you getting together with some other people and talking and wasting time about things that are not going to really change lives, are not going to change and transform people. You're going to affect a couple of hundred people on YouTube, maybe, and that's it. Okay. You're not going to go out and affect the world. If everybody took the resources and got their butts off of the internet, like me right now, and took that time and effort and energy out to the world, what a beautiful place that would be. Out there cleaning up garbage, out there volunteering, doing something. Can you imagine? Do you think the world would show God's love more through our works and how God would work through people, helping out other humans, helping out people, going out, say, you know what, not gonna do the panel today. I'm gonna go out and try to sign up for volunteer work, or I'm gonna try to volunteer some of the hours a day, and I'm not gonna do my channel anymore because look at these hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours. Sometimes people do 20, 30 hours a week, more. A week times a year, thousands of hours or whatever, hundreds of hours. Time where you've done nothing. You've done nothing really but waste time. You changed nobody's lives really. Same people come on the live streams. You've really affected nothing and you've done nothing. It's basically people wasting time out of boredom, I think. And it's sad because that's what we're up against with religion. People have become closed off. They're not engaging with fellow humans anymore. We're engaging only with like-minded believers ourselves. Unitarians, even smaller, little camp. Let's talk to Unitarians. And we'll get together with 4 or 5 people and get 100, 200, 300, 400 views. Great. Wow. Ooh. And at the end of the day, we're going to get up and do the same thing over again. People are going to really have a regret on that day on their deathbed because all of that time you could have turned off YouTube, could have turned off the channel and taken a walk or gone out and actually partook in life, done things, shut down YouTube, spend time with your girlfriend or your wife or your husband or whatever, call a friend, go out and do something. But religion has basically turned a lot of us into prisoners of faith. And I don't know, man. It seems like the more people read the Bible, the crazier they get. They just do. I don't know what it is, but they become obsessed. Like it's like a spiritual. I don't know, man. I really think, I think that people, it can make you nuts. It can make you go nuts when you start just putting your faith and trust into a book where you're not thinking anymore. Like, it's okay to believe in the Bible. It's okay to believe everything's true. But don't lose that little voice inside of you that says, I got to be on guard because I got to be careful. Maybe this is not all true. You can't cut that off because once you do, you can get sucked into something that's not true and you'll never know. So you'll believe in a book like the Bible and say it's not true. Well, it could be a distraction. Think about this. Could the Bible be a satanic distraction from the truth? Sure, it could be. You could make a ton of arguments for it. How? How so? Well, you could make an argument that the Bible is designed to keep people fighting and debating and confused and not uniting as people. Look at what the Bible has done. It's marginalized us. It's sectioned us off. It's told us do not engage with other people who don't believe like you do. Cut yourself off. Do not talk to them. Do not even wish them good speed. And so just because it has some good things in it doesn't mean that's
the enemy will mix a lot of truth with lies. And so what do you see today within Christianity? Does it bring a lot of good fruit around the world? Not really. Not really with the body of billions of people. Most of them don't do jack diddly squat. There's some really good people in the churches. There's some really good people within Catholicism. There are, but they're few and far between. The majority of people go to church on Sunday, they dress up, and then the rest of the week they really do jack diddly squat. Okay, I'm one of them. Like I said, I'm not trying to toot my horn or anything. I'm saying that this is religion that causes this. And most of the people that I know that go to church, they're not really, I mean, they're religious, but they're not like, they don't really do the things the Bible tells you to do. Okay. The Bible tells you to basically put on the cross and walk like that. They don't. Very few people I know do. And so, but again, when you have a book that's confusing, it's hard to put all your faith and trust. If I had a book that was laid out very clear, very succinctly, that wasn't debatable, that was basically very clear that God's real, which I know God's real, but the God of the Bible is real. These are the things laid out. Boom, boom, boom. There's no ambiguous verses about it. I would be a lot more apt to believe in what it says. But if we have a God that's going to punish us based upon a book that could go any way, you could read, like I said, give that Bible to people who have never heard of Christianity before, hypothetically, give that Bible to 100 people and let them read it. They probably would come away with 78 different types of beliefs, probably 100 actually. People would just create all. I don't think anybody would believe. Well, I know for a fact nobody would believe exactly the same. Okay, so 100 out of 100, they would not believe. There's something in there that would just be different. Okay, and like I said, a book that's got eternity on the line. The things that matter should be very clear. Okay, very clear, and I think they are. I mean, if you are really reasonable and you read the Bible through a biblical Unitarian perspective, I think they're pretty clear. Okay. You have to go out of your way to read. We say the Father is the only true God. And Paul says we have but one God, the Father. I think that's pretty clear. Okay. I don't think that's the Bible's fault when it says that. Okay. Jesus never says he's God in the Bible. So I think it's pretty clear. I mean, I don't think God expected us to be that stupid, really. Well, Jesus says the Father is the only true God. Now we have to explain what that means. Well, the only true God means in the sense that nobody else is God. We're not talking about idols. See, any child that reads this without being programmed would read this exactly what it says. The Father is the only true God. We have one God, the Father. That should be it. The problem is we have these other people who want to read the Bible through their own lens, and they add their own interpretation, say, nah, that's not quite it. It means this, it means that. See, that's again, mankind wanting to believe in something, so they add their own flavor to it. And that's the problem within Christianity is when you have a man-made religion, you're going to have all kinds of man-made constructs, church councils and creeds, and doctrines. And so I think that's about it. I think that's about it for now. The songs, I'll probably make songs, but I won't make Christian. Well, I don't know. I mean, I like worship songs, but I don't know. I think religion to me, like I said, I think Christianity is beautiful in its own way. I think what kind of broke me a lot of ways is I know too much now. I know too much now. Now, do I regret not knowing as much? No, I would rather know. I mean, I probably would be kind of oblivious to reality and just a dumb, I say Christian. Like, I don't mean to sound mean, but a lot of Christians are kind of dumb as far as not knowing a lot of the things, which is kind of good. And they're just oblivious to it. And they'll probably die and live a life of peace. They probably will. They'll probably be peaceful and they'll die in ignorance. Do I think God's going to punish them and send them to hell because of that? No, actually, I think they're like children. They haven't got intellectual. They just believe in the simple things, and they're not caught up in the entanglement of intellectuality. And I think these people actually are going to have better spiritual lives than the rest of us, that have chosen the path of intellectuality, that have chosen to try and dig and get into the Bible, get into the grit, and try to understand all these things. Sure, that sounds great, but it comes with a high cost. It comes with a high cost because, again, we're digging into the intellectual parts where we're not just taking the simple spiritual teachings and going with them. So that's the problem, is the more intellectual you get with the Bible, the more tired you're going to be, the more divided you're going to be, the more hardened you're going to be, I think. And the people that I've seen, the Christians that I've seen with the more peace, are the grandmothers who don't get into the Hebrew and the Greek. They don't care. You ask them, is Jesus God? Yeah, he is. He's the Alpha and the Omega. And then their eyes are just like so sure of it. He's in Revelation 1:8. He's the Lord God. They just are taught that, and they believe it, and they're peaceful, and they're happy. And to me, like I said, that's the scary thing is when I look at them, I go, oh, if you only knew. But is it up to me to wreck that? Because when I start breaking that down, see, that's the proof that the Christianity is basically, it's a man-made belief system. Because if I want them to know the truth in Christianity, then it should be up to me, and I should be under the direction from God to teach them and show them they're being deceived. But see, now I take away from their peace. Now I take away from their peace, and what? Now I get them out of their belief in the church, and when they have peace with God and they're showing the fruits of the Spirit, now I break them down, and what are they going to do? They're going to abandon the Trinity, and they're going to become a biblical Unitarian. See, is that going to bring them more peace? Well, now they'll understand that God is one, but they're not going to be more peaceful. They're going to lose the fellowship of the church. They're going to lose all these things. Their eyes might be opened, but now it's not a peaceful ignorance, I guess. I don't know which is better. Like I said, I don't know which is better. To me, I mean, I believe every religion is deception, in my opinion, but that's the hard thing. Would I rather be ignorant and go along with just a lie and have peace than have no peace and believe in it? I don't know. I mean, even if I have the biblical Unitarian belief with the truth, I still believe it's just the Bible's a deception in a lot of ways. It's not the truth. So a lot of this is me trying to figure things out and rambling, but yeah, I don't know. I just kind of am dumbfounded because I spent a lot of time in religion, thousands of hours. I actually thought about deleting my channel, which I probably will. I might just do, or I might hide it. I don't know what I'll do. I have to think about stuff, but I don't want videos up there anymore, really, that talk about attacking other people's religions and stuff, when I'm just not into that anymore. I have no desire to attack people's faith anymore. Like, you'll never see me on another panel. I can almost promise you. You'll never see me on another panel debating the Trinity. You'll never see me on another panel debating oneness or debating the biblical Unitarian faith. You just won't. I see that as a waste of time now. I think that the biblical Unitarian faith seems, if I have to be honest, it makes the most sense. It's the most biblical. I can say that now without any bias. I have no bias at all. I have no dog in the fight anymore. And so if I'm honest with myself, the biblical Unitarian faith, if I'm honest, the Trinity and the oneness are ridiculous. Okay, I'll just come out and say it. They are ridiculous when it comes to teachings. They're just not biblical whatsoever. The biblical Unitarian faith, if the Bible is true, is the only reasonable explanation of that. But again, there's no church. There's too many problems. See, so even within the biblical Unitarian faith, there's problems. The way the canonization was put together, that was done by Trinitarians and other people. The churches aren't the same ways they are said to be in the Bible. The miracles don't work. There's other problems besides the biblical Unitarian faith. But yes, as far as a teaching of monotheism, the biblical Unitarian position is the only one I could ever go along with because it's taught. Other things, the oneness, when I hear people talk about the oneness, Jesus is the Father, He was the Father. The Spirit was in him. It's just nonsense. It's like, but again, am I going to start attacking people on their faith? No. That's why I'll stay away from these panels, because if I'm, like I said, if I'm an outsider talking about what's taught, the biblical Unitarian faith is the only one that makes sense. And it's the only one that's taught. And I can say that again I'm not trying to push a biblical Unitarian agenda. I'm not a biblical Unitarian anymore. I'm somebody who, I don't know. I believe God is, the way I believe God is, God created everything and God laid out laws and God lets these things work. He's not playing favorites. He's not intervening. He's not watching little Susie get murdered and raped and decides to stop in on Josie, but leave little Susie out for the Jekylls and the hyenas. No, he just doesn't intervene. Because if God intervened like that, we would not have free will. He would be intervening all the time at his own discretion, and that would not be a loving God. A loving God would be somebody who creates laws, he creates order, and these things happen because laws are broken. You go and violate certain things happen, people get killed because of circumstance, things happen. A lot of times it's because we're not looking out for each other. We've allowed the world to become more wicked. We've allowed people's spiritual life to become fractured. We're not caring really about people anymore. We're caring more about ourselves, what we can do, what we can promote. We're not looking out for our fellow human, right? So yeah, as we section ourselves off into other faiths or into other sections, we're not going to be watching out for each other. We're going to be desensitized. We watch murders and rapes on television. We see all these things. They don't really strike us anymore as evil. We just kind of laugh. Some kids will laugh when they see people getting hurt now because people have become desensitized to it. It's funny. Okay, it's shock value now. But back in the old days, you could spend your whole entire life and never see anybody get killed. But nowadays, you watch television, you see somebody getting their brains blown out. You see somebody getting their head cut off, stabbed. You see these things visually, and it's pretty traumatic because if you were a kid and you saw these things, they frighten you. But as an adult, you become desensitized to them because you see them so often. But it's damaging. It damages you because you're seeing a person being stabbed. You're seeing a person's life being snuffed out of them. And nowadays, people are so used to it, they just, oh, wow. Back in the old days, people would be crying. They'd be recoiling in horror and terror. That's how realistic these would be. Can you imagine taking one of these movies and putting it back during the time of Christ and the apostles back then? People would be screaming probably and freaking out watching people get stabbed. They wouldn't understand. It's not real. Well, sometimes your brain does not know things are not real. Your brain takes these things in, even though you know it's not real. Your brain still it processes things, and sometimes it doesn't know the difference. That's the danger. So when you start consuming all this bad music, all these bad movies, certain things that are bad, pornography, and all these things, there's so much that pollutes your mind. Okay, and we're not watching out for each other. It's basically, in my opinion, your objective throughout the day should be trying to be as pure and as godly as you possibly can, and to encourage other people to continue that path. If somebody honks at you and flips you off, your reaction shouldn't be, I want to seem really tough and I don't want that person to get the better of me. I'm going to flip them off and I'm going to scream at them. Well, what you're doing is you're doing a couple of things. You're allowing them to disrupt your peace, which I will never do to a person. Person can get in my face usually and go off and start calling me names and things like that. I don't react that way because, first of all, I live in a very violent city, but I don't let people get my goat like that. I don't let people affect me. If somebody can cuss and flip me off, it doesn't bother me. Like I don't care. I'm not going to allow somebody that I don't care about or nobody disrupt my peace. But I'm also not going to go and disrupt their spiritual, because usually what happens if you react that same way and you flip them off, well, first of all, you're allowing a nobody to disrupt your spiritual peace, and then you're getting to disrupt their spiritual peace. So you're losing both ways. Somebody flips me off in a car, starts yelling at me. I don't really care. It doesn't bother me. Like, I'm not going to react and go, oh, I don't get even bothered by it. I don't get bothered by it. Now, if they start coming at me and get in my face, that's a whole different deal, because I carry a gun wherever I go, and I don't have problems using it. Okay, I've used it before. I don't have problems using it. So I'm not somebody who's going to back off, but usually they have to come and try to harm me or something, and then it's not going to be good. Okay. But as far as somebody yelling and screaming and doing these flamboyant stuff, I don't care. They can call me names. They can say all these bad things. They can flip me off. I really, it doesn't bother me. And I think it shouldn't bother you either, because ultimately it doesn't matter what they say. It matters your reaction to it, because God's going to be more harsh on you than you reacting in some way to a person who you don't even know, and you're going to allow that person, you're really going to allow a person you don't even know to affect you like that. Then you have no real control of your emotions. As a man, you should have control of your emotions. You should not allow a guy, a girl, whatever. That's why I never would hit a woman, ever. I never have yelled. I don't yell at women either. I don't think I have ever yelled at a woman. Maybe I have, but I just don't remember. I don't try to make a habit of it, but I just don't yell. I don't get back and start screaming, because that one thing a man should never do is start acting like a woman. Women are emotional. You start yelling at a woman starts getting your emotions, then they've got what they wanted. And you just, as a man, you can't do that. Like, a woman should never be able to control you like that, your emotions, and be able to start screaming at you. And what are you going to do? You're going to start screaming back? Like, how is that even? And I don't understand that at all. I don't understand how people can start screaming back and start getting to, I don't know. I think I can. I mean, when I start thinking about some of the times in the past, yeah, I mean, I guess it all depends on the circumstance, but usually I don't try to make a habit of it. I don't think anybody does, but I think a lot of these panels, you see the screaming. Man, I was on TikTok. They were insane. People screaming, yelling, fighting. It was just unnerving. Like, I really was spiritually drained when I was on those panels. Hey, what's up, Von Eric? So, but I'm just rambling at this point. It's kind of like my farewell kind of thing, I think. It's been fun. I've met a lot. Like I said, I have a lot of regrets, though. I have a lot of regrets. I met a lot of people, but to be honest with you, I met a lot of people, which I love, and I'm happy for that. But if and not to take things personally, but I would have met a lot of people outside of YouTube that I probably would have affected more, because at the end of the day, these channels that you have don't matter jack squat. They're going to go away, and I mean this for people to think. The thousands of hours you spent into these channels are not changing anybody. Okay, they're not. You might affect a couple of people, a dozen, maybe, but you're not going to affect people the way you would if you were out there in the world. Thousands and hundreds. Your work would be reverberating out. You could save a life being out there helping somebody, an old lady, just being around somebody. You don't know the effect. And again, if we pulled all our resources together to do these things, what a different world that would be. But instead, religion has marginalized us, has sectioned us off into our own little cliques. And that's the sad thing about religion. Okay. So my goal is to be more involved in humanity, to be more to try and get out there more and try to do better things. And so it's up to you. If you don't have to follow my path. Your path is your own path. You want to follow the Bible and that brings you peace. I don't recommend changing anything. Okay. It wouldn't be my path though. Okay. It wouldn't be my path, because I just know too much, not to be like prideful. I just know too much. When you have a personality and you just know that you could never believe in something because it's so ingrained, you just know. And so for me to sit in a church and have them talk about the Trinity, I go, oh my gosh, this is I could never believe in it now. That it kind of ruined me. I could never all of a sudden go back and start believing that, oh my gosh, God's a Trinity. God's three persons now. See, it just wouldn't flow. And so when I see people that believe in it, I just look at it's just religion. Okay. Religion causes this. Religion causes this programming. And it's just something that I can't be a partaker anymore of. But I'll always, when somebody talks about the oneness or the Trinity and stuff, if I'm honest, what do I think? I think this person is sadly just they're grasping onto a religion. They're looking for something, and it's sad because that's the best they got, but it's not truth. It's kind of like going to hinder them. It's going to give them something they need, but it's going to rob them of other things they really need. Okay. When you understand God created life, God created you as an individual that wants a personal relationship with you, that wants to guide you throughout your life on an individual basis, that wants you to reach out and get other people to kind of grow in faith and also grow in being godly and good people and treat humanity kindly and not fight and yell and try to create disagreements and contention, then that's spirituality. That's going to change your life and give you peace more than you could ever know. Okay, that's going to bring you a lot more peace than sectioning yourself off in a tiny little group within Christianity and call yourself a Christian. Well, I'm a Christian. Well, that doesn't mean jack squat. Okay, a lot of Christians say the same thing, and they don't even believe the same thing you do, and they have the same Bible. So you can call yourself that all your day long if it makes you feel better. That's your opinion. But when you start realizing that, hey, God put me on this earth for a reason, and it's not to be bounced around in religion, it's to be the best person I can possibly be and to help other people be as spiritual as they possibly can. I'm going to go through my life every day trying to be a spiritual person, trying to be observant, trying to advance people spiritually. And when you get on these panels, when you start debating, making these videos, you're not doing any of that. You're harming yourself. You're harming yourself and you're harming other people. And so a lot of people don't like that. A lot of people want to do these things because they have a spirit of contention. They have a spirit of argument. They have a spirit of divisiveness. They enjoy, they get this adrenaline rush off of debating. They get this adrenaline rush off of going against other people and just, yeah, I got them. And see, but that's not a spirit of enlightenment. That's not a spirit of peace. That's a spirit that's been controlled through the flesh. Okay. And so, I think once you realize your purpose, it's to be as spiritual as you possibly can, to be as godly as you possibly can, to be pure. That's the truth. Okay. That's a simple truth. Whatever it takes you to be pure and spiritual, that's the truth. That's connects you to God. And your conscience drives you. Okay. You have to be aware and you have to be careful because a lot of things can affect that. Okay. So, you can do damage to a person's conscience, like spiritual, as a child if you abuse them or a lot of these things are very spiritual that can become unbalanced. Okay. So, you have a conscience given to you by God, and that conscience should govern you. That conscience should drive you. When you read a book that tells you little children were slaughtered by God and you're bothered by it, that should wake you up. But the problem is people have read it so many times. They've convinced themselves of evil so much that they no longer care. That's the danger of religion. That's the danger of the Bible. First time somebody reads that, their conscience bothers them. How could God kill these kids? Leave no child untouched, kill them all, slaughter them? Oh my. See, that's your conscience, but you're reading a book that you're told is God's word, and God's ways are not your ways. And so you convince yourself of weird rationality that it's okay that God kills these little kids. And then you're setting yourself up for a fall. Every time you read the Bible, you've already accepted that God can slaughter children, God can kill infants, God can send bears to shred and maul these little kids for making fun of a prophet. When you've allowed yourself to believe that, then the Bible, when a lot of these other things come across that are just weird and wrong, you're going to, okay, I believe that too. See, and that's the danger of turning your consciousness off to believe in a religion. So when I read the Bible and I see God killing children, I go, nah, I would never kill a kid. I would never slaughter a kid. I would never send bears to shred and rip apart 42 little kids if I was offended at them calling me bald. If we are to be judged, and even in our thoughts, if we think something bad about somebody, we're considered to be a murderer. What more a prophet of God, Elijah, who's bothered by these kids making fun of his bald head, he calls a curse upon them to have them shredded, and God honors that. And God's okay with that. A prophet of God who's supposed to be what's the fruit of the Spirit from him? Okay, if anybody in the Bible, if any of us, if some kids came out and made fun of me, or anybody came out, if you knew that somebody made fun of me or whatever, and I called one of my friends to come over and slash them to pieces with a knife, you would think I was sadistic. You would think that I would be evil, right? Especially if one of those were your kids. Some kids come up and make fun of me, and I order the next door the dog. I let loose the dog, and the dog's a pit bull. It runs down and starts biting these little kids and tearing them up because they made fun of me and laughed at me. You would not trust me around your kids. You would not want me anywhere near your house, probably, because you would think that I was crazy. Okay. But yet, we're supposed to believe that God and the prophet, the loving, compassionate God, and the all-wise, knowing prophet of God, who's supposed to be beyond reproach, is going to allow these little kids to be shredded and ripped apart, and you have no problem with it, then you really have lost your sense of logic and reasoning. Okay, if we would never do something like that, I would. Would you? Would you allow these little children to be ripped apart to shredded, or anybody to be ripped apart and shredded because they made fun of you? What are we supposed to do if somebody comes up and makes fun of us? Are we supposed to unleash the hounds? Are we supposed to unleash the pit bulls that are hidden behind our yard? Go attack them and rip them apart. How dare you make fun of me? No, we're supposed to show grace. We're supposed to show forgiveness. Turn the other cheek, remember? Love your neighbor. Pray for them. Have peace. Have spiritual, discernment. But if some kids came out and made fun of me, and I reached behind my house and I unleashed my pit bulls and they ran out and they tore apart these kids, you would think that I was evil. I was not somebody who had the fruit of the Spirit. Okay. You just have to think about and use your brain. If a prophet is doing that, and they're supposed to be a prophet of God, but yet we would never do that, then there's something wrong. And God sending and honoring that request, there's something wrong with God. If God is playing games with Job and Satan and betting and letting Satan kill his family, then there's something wrong with God. If you found out you were doing your best job at trying to be as walking in righteousness as God as you possibly could, that was your main focus, you were trying to do everything, and you knew that up in the heavenly realm, there's Satan having a bet with God about you. And Satan says, let me kill his family. Let me attack him. He'll turn on you. And God says, okay, well, go ahead and do whatever you need to do, but don't kill him. And so Satan gets the okay. What about the hedge of protection around you? God puts a hedge of protection around me. Well, apparently that doesn't work all the time, because even if you're righteous, even if you're doing God's will, God has a little bet with Satan. And God allows, imagine your loved children, your children that you love, 10 of them or whatever. God lets Satan kill them. Kill them, your own kids. Nothing that you did wrong, just a bet. It's a bet that you will turn away and curse God. And then he takes away everything that you have, kills all your animals, takes away your fortune, inflicts you with painful boils, all a test to test your loyalty. And you don't curse God. You're like, oh, your wife says, curse God and die, and you don't. And then God goes, man, you passed. Good job. I'm really proud of you. See, Satan, I told you he would pass the test. Satan's like, darn it. Well, great. Now you've got 10 dead kids. You've got all these livestock that are dead. And God says, no, Matt, don't worry. I'll give you new kids. And he gives you new kids, better than your first ones. You get more riches and you get more cattle. And again, if God is doing these things, then God is a nutcase. God is making wagers up in heaven over people and replacing your children like they're nothing, like they're objects. Okay. You got to think about these things. Would you honestly be happy and thinking God has your back if God is waging bets with Satan, even when you are trying to do good? If God allows you to be thrown into all of these perils and inflicted with boils and your kids to be murdered, even when you're doing good, then what more if you are angry at God or if you do something wrong? And see, that shows in the Bible. When you do something wrong, God will cut your throat. He'll slaughter you. He'll have kids stoned to death. He has no mercy. No mercy, even though I am a God of long suffering. I have loved you with an endless love. That's what he says, but what he does is completely different. Now, do I believe God operates like that? Absolutely not. Okay, the God of the Bible is portrayed as evil, wicked. Okay, evil, wicked, and condemning, mean, merciless, not the God of the New Testament. That's why most people who are loving and kind do not read much of the Old Testament, because they see a God of wrath, a God of anger, a God of who's very vindictive, a God who's petty, a God who has major, major personality problems. The God of the New Testament, love, kindness. That's a God that you can familiarize yourself. A God who hopefully people can see in you. A God of love, compassion. But you don't really see much of him talking because Jesus is talking. Okay. You don't see God, hey, Jesus, you better tell them not to do that or I'll smite them dead. I will destroy them. I am the God. I am a man of war. You do not see the same God in the New Testament that you see in the Old Testament. That should be another red flag for you and a wake-up call. A radical departure from the Old Testament. And again, it's because the Jews were under occupation by the Romans, not that God changed into Mr. Rogers. Okay. He went from Genghis Khan to Mr. Rogers in a couple of chapters. No, he's not the same person. He's not the same God. Okay. So, the hard part, though, is to untangle yourself from dogma. Oh, you're going to go to hell. You have to believe in the Bible. You have to believe in the Bible. See, I know if I was hearing somebody speak like this before, I would go, oh my gosh, how blasphemous. I don't even want to listen to him. He's been deceived by Satan. See, these are conditional responses by people who are locked into dogma. You should weigh all the evidence. You should be objective enough to listen to everything and see if it actually makes sense and see if it's biblically sound. Again, when you have a Bible that has so many problems where nobody agrees, that should be a red flag for you that something is amiss. Something is wrong. Okay? Something is wrong. God's going to judge us based upon a Bible where nobody agrees and we got 10,000 or so different denominations. I don't buy that at all. Okay. So, I think the best case is, and I know I'm repeating myself over and over again. That's fine. There's people that pop in after and listens after. I think we're all going to be judged on many things. And I think the people that are in religion are they're in for a surprise, because religion has allowed you to become kind of egocentric. Religion has allowed you to kind of become kind of prideful and arrogant in your surroundings, where you think you have the truth and everybody else doesn't. And that's the danger. Religion has caused people to be ignorant and complacent. Um, I think, there's a lot of people in Islam that have a lot more peace and love than Christianity. Not because the Quran is that way. It's just that certain people have different personalities, and certain people take from a book the spiritual things they need and grow. Okay. There's some people that have a more combative personality, combative spirit, and they take from the Bible to use it as a battering ram and a way to attack others. There are certain people who take Christianity and they use it to mock other faiths, to use it as, and I did that myself, to use it as a way to pass time, a way to troll, a way to kind of get yourself out there, to build a channel name. And there's certain people that don't have that personality. What they do is they use their Bible for spiritual magnification and for growth. And these people are going to have better spiritual lives. The people that do the channels like me are going to be spiritually dead. They're not going to grow spiritually. They're not going to help anybody out. And they're going to waste all the time. And I guarantee you, they're going to lose faith. They're going to lose, because you're not building any spiritual, you're not building any spiritual knowledge like internally. You're building intellectual knowledge. And that only lasts for a certain amount of time. And then you're going to get tired of it. You're going to quit it. You're going to give it up. And then you're going to pick it up. It's kind of like a bad habit. When you start growing spiritually, that resonates and stays with you. Okay. You become more powerful and you become more bolden, because intellectuality becomes, it's not spirituality. You can't have both necessarily. And so, I mean, you can, but when you're focused on one and not the other, you're not going to have spirituality. And that's what you need. Your mind and your body seek that out. And so you're going to become tired because you're not growing spiritually. Your flesh becomes weak. You're not nurturing your spirit. And so that's what I see today in modern day Christianity. All these debates, all this infighting, all these disagreements, all these panels. It's exhausting. It's exhausting and tiring because it's so fake. Everybody's so fake. Everybody gets on there and, blessings and pray for him and all these things. That's just like a little community. They're not really looking out for the rest of humanity. It's their YouTube channel. So my YouTube channel doesn't matter. I might even delete my YouTube channel because I've spent a lot of time attacking other faiths that I didn't have any business doing. It's not my business to attack somebody else's faith. I really don't care what people believe now. I really don't. As long as it gets you to a place of enlightenment and trying to be holy and pure. Do I really think if you are trying to make an just effort to be pure and godly and try to connect to God and doing everything you possibly can, and you don't get everything right, God's going to send you to hell? No, I don't. Even if you don't believe, see, I have to be honest. The Bible tells you all these things about Jesus, but again, the Bible has problems with it. So I don't reject the crucifixion of Jesus. Now, I don't believe Jesus was crucified. I believe he was. I mean, that's what the Bible says. But again, it's kind of hypocritical for me to say, well, the Bible says it, so I have to believe it. I think that there's evidence enough through history that Christ was crucified. I think, Josephus and all these other non-Christians, I think there's enough evidence for me to believe that. There's no reason for me to not agree with it, okay? I'll just say that. I don't need to go out of my way and start to deny the crucifixion, to deny the resurrection. Okay? I don't need to because they don't benefit me to deny them. Like, why? Okay? So I have no problem with the Bible, the way it's presented, with the overlying story. Do I believe everything that's in the Bible is legit? No, I don't. Okay, I don't. Could the crucifixion and resurrection be false? Sure, it could be. But I'm always open to things that are going to benefit me spiritually. If I make changes in my life and they benefit me spiritually, and I become more peaceful, I become more holy, I become, exhibiting more fruits of the Spirit, then I'm going to see God working in my life like that. But if I start seeing distractions from it, then I'm going to start questioning things. And that's what I see within Christianity. I see too much division, too much infighting, and no true peace. When things are questioned, especially, a lot of people flip their cookies. They cannot handle any questioning about their faith. And I think you should be open to question. Your religion should be open to interrogation. You should be able to defend it. And you should also look at things. The problem that I see within Christianity is people have become brainwashed. They're not open to even entertaining the possibility they could be wrong. And again, when you have a book that nobody agrees on, for you to think that you could not be wrong shows a lot of arrogance and ego. So, to me, I will read the Bible, but I look at it as another book of mankind trying to understand God. I don't care about certain things. Could they be true? Yeah, they could not be true. But I'm going to think about the things that resonate with me in my spirit and my soul. I'm not going to try to argue over things anymore about what could be true and what could not be. Try to go on panels to try and find out if the flood really happened. To me, I don't care. It says it happened. Could it have happened? Sure. Could it have been false? Sure. I look at the overall theme. What's important about not doing? Don't steal. Don't lie. The end result is what we should focus on, not the story behind it. Okay. You don't focus on the story of the little boy that cried wolf and start going, well, what color was the wolf's clothes, or what, was he really like pure? Like, was he 100% wolf, or maybe he was mixed with some dingo or something, or how tall was the wolf? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. What color hair did the child have? Was he attractive? Was a kid like 10 or 12? It doesn't matter. And so the problem today is, if you take this analogy, is that's what people care more about, it seems like. They care more about trying to find out how old the kid was, whether he was a white kid or a black kid, whether he had short hair or long hair, whether or not he was wearing skinny jeans, whether or not the wolf was a purebred, than the actual underlying story that's behind it. Okay, don't tell false stories, otherwise people will not believe you. That's what you focus on. You don't focus on the things that are abstract, that are kind of like not even really, that don't matter. Okay. So when you think about the flood, don't focus on all these things and go in there and try to find out the dimensions, all these. Who cares? Focus on God was angry. God wiped out the earth. Done. Okay. He was mad. You don't need to be intellectual about things, because I think people, can you imagine spending your entire life studying the Bible and finding out later it was a lie? Can you imagine that? The time and effort you put in to believe in everything in the Bible and find out later that most of it was just not true, stories but made by men. Okay, that's really hard to fathom, and that's a real good possibility that it's not all true. Okay, so I'm going to leave people with this. Again, it's your journey. It's your relationship with God. And I will never, like, if you want to believe in the Bible, do I believe in the Bible the same way? No, I don't. I'll be honest enough to admit it. I do not believe in the Bible the way people do. Do I believe the Bible is the inerrant word of God? No, I don't. I believe there are things in the Bible that are biblically, scripturally sound. I believe there are scriptures in the Bible that are very powerful, and they do contain spiritual power behind them. Just like many things in the words that we speak contain spiritual power behind them. I think God looks at our heart and looks at us as if we're trying to use the Bible for our own progression, for our own advancement on trying to belittle others, attack others, try to use it as a way to elevate ourselves, or if we're trying to use the Bible as a way to to find truth, to gain knowledge. That's the difference. And I think we're not going to be looked at very good if we use the book that other people are given to attack others. And I've been guilty of it for a long time. So I'm probably in a lot of trouble. Okay. But I will never do it again. And so I will never do it again because my eyes have been opened to a lot of these things people are doing. And I'm not bashing people because I understand why they did it. I understand why I did it myself. Because again, it's built upon, it's created upon the desire to be right, to want to have truth. And we read the same Bible other people do. And that's why people are always on these panels. God Logic channel, 4,000 people. He has more people on his channel than most churches have in stadiums, packed stadiums, because they tune into him now, because they're looking for somebody who has somebody who can teach them something they can't get themselves from the Bible. And the Bible creates this void. If the Bible was the legitimate word of God, we would not need, like the Bible says, you have no need for anyone to be teachers. You have an unction from the Holy One. You need nobody to teach you, in the book of James, I believe. Okay? But that's not true, because we read the Bible, we get 10,000 different variations. So we go to someone who's a constant voice that teaches us, because we can't get it from ourselves. We can't learn from ourselves. We can't disseminate all this stuff ourselves. We have to be told what to believe. And that's the red flag. Okay. So everybody has their own mission in life. You have your own goal. You have your own mission. You have your own spiritual life to lead. And that should be your focus, not the Bible. Okay. If you want to believe in that, like I said, that's your deal. But you really, I think I'm not warning people, but I'm using me as an example of what not to do. Don't attack people based upon their faith, because I really don't think it's going to be good for you in the end. I'm not going to attack Muslims. I'm not going to attack anybody. I have no business, first of all, to try to convince somebody of my belief when my belief, if I was a Christian, is so confusing, so convoluted, and so just contradicting. I'm not going to try to talk somebody into believing what I believe when my belief, if I was a Christian, is probably one of the most confusing religions in the world, and it contradicts itself, and everybody disagrees. Okay, somebody else would come along and try to convince them that he wants to be a oneness, and I go, "Oh, oneness, those people." I used to call oneness belief Trinitarianism's crazy cousin, because again, it's to me, the oneness belief and the Trinity beliefs are crazy. They're just nuts. They're not biblical. But I'm not going to go on channels and attack people on it, because to me, the Bible is nuts itself. The Bible is crazy in a lot of ways. And so when you have a crazy book, you're going to have crazy beliefs born out of it. If you had a book that was God inspired, that was divine, I don't think you would have 10,000 or more different denominations and all these beliefs born out of the same book. You would have clear, logical instructions, especially when it comes down to eternal security. I am a God, a jealous God. You shall have no other gods before me. I alone am God. There's nobody but me. And Jesus, the scriptures are very clear. They emphasize over and over again, the Father is the only true God. That's clear, concise. There's no debate about it. There's no variations about it. You don't have people trying to add the begotten God in there. You don't have to try to add words. Everything's clear. Baptism, again, ad nauseum. You must be baptized to be saved. If you do not, you will not make it to paradise. You will not enter heaven. You will be cast away. Must be baptized. You must be baptized. You must be baptized. Okay. That's very clear. If you said that over and over and said that without being ambiguous, there would be no need for debating. But the Bible, unfortunately, does not have that. It leaves other verses that contradict that or cause confusion. See, that's just more proof that it's man-made. If you have clear statements, You shall be baptized. There's no excuses. Make sure you do. Jesus was baptized for a reason. You must be baptized into the kingdom. Okay. You could say this repeatedly throughout the Bible, and you would not be left to ambiguity. Once saved, always saved again. Ad nauseum. You must believe in the gospel. It's changing. Paul says you must finish the race. If you do not finish the race, you might not be saved. Finish the race like an athlete. Okay. Then you would let's see there. Then you would have no disagreement about it. You would have clear instructions, but we don't have that. We don't have that. Dietary laws. I mean, it's pretty clear to me. It's spiritual. If you have the spiritual, you do not need the law because you're covered under this. But see, people go against it with other passages. See, so there are passages that leave it open to interpretation. And I think that if it was a divine book, for one thing, it would be very clear and concise. You're not going to leave your children with a confusing instruction set where you give the instructions to your kids and 4 of them come away with different readings of it. Well, I thought you said this. Well, I thought you said that. Well, I thought you said this. Well, are you going to feel like you're the problem or they're the problem? All 4 of them got it wrong. Well, who wrote the confusions, the instructions confusingly? You did. It's your job as a parent to be more clear. If you left humanity with a book that's so convoluted, so confusing, people have taken books out, 66 books versus the others. Catholics disagree, the Protestants disagree, Eastern Orthodox, the schism is 1052, 1053, or whatever. All these branches, the Trinity, the oneness. Man, you really messed up with trying to dictate your belief upon humanity. You left humanity with just a disaster. Okay. Now, for you to go on and punish humanity because they don't get it right, or some people go, you know what, the Bible's too confusing to me. I don't think God would give me a confusing book like that. I'm going to reject it. See, so people reject the Bible because they believe more in God. They believe that God would never deceive people like that. They do not want to take a chance of putting their eggs in a basket where there's deception in there. They see deception on them. They see the hands of men getting their hands in things and changing things in the Bible, altering words, changing things. Hey, what's up, Cherubim? So can you blame somebody from departing from that and not wanting to believe in it? I couldn't. And for God to go, you know what? You didn't follow what I said in the Bible. Well, nobody agreed. Well, you didn't get it quite right. You are damned for hell. You are banished. I curse you in the name of the Lord. I guess it's possible because in the Old Testament, he was pretty vicious. So if it's the same God, then maybe he's setting us all up for a disappointment. Maybe we're all going to get that disappointment in the end. We're all going to be just, wouldn't that be something if we find out that it's just all a game and we're all going to be facing eternal hellfire? All of us. It's just a big game. We're all going to be put into the oven. I mean, come on, you look at the God of the Old Testament and you see how he has no problem punishing people for the smallest infraction. What if all of us are set up to fall? I don't believe that, but hey, anything's possible, right? Nah, I don't believe that for a second. I think that, again, we really need to focus on our relationship with God individually and not be distracted by religion. And I've said the same thing probably for the past 2 hours, going back and forth in the circles. I just, I'm just kind of like I said, I'm reflecting and thinking about stuff as I go. It's getting late, but that's where I'm at right now. Hey, all right, man. Good job. 53 from yesterday. Happy birthday to you. So that's about it. I don't think there's much more for me to say. I mean, I might touch on things, but my goal is not to go on channels anymore or have a channel to destroy people's faith. I'm not going to create a channel and have videos later to attack the Bible. That's not what I'm about. I'm not going to have a channel dedicated, well, I'm going to go on and prove the Bible's not true and the flood didn't happen. No, not going to happen. You're welcome. I'm not going to start attacking Christianity. I'm not going to start attacking religion. I'm not going to attack anybody's faith. That's not my job anymore. My job is not to attack anybody's faith or try to make somebody question their belief or try to get somebody into the spirit of contention. And I really think people that are doing that should really think about what they're doing, because I really think religion has given us that that kind of egotistical attitude where we're going to start attacking people, and we really miss the focus of our mission. You cannot have true peace and joy when you're attacking somebody else's faith. You can't. You're not peaceful. You're in the flesh, and most people are not willing to admit it. Most people are not willing to give it up, because let's face it, most people on these channels have these channels for a reason. They have these channels because they do it to have entertainment. They do it to pass time. They do it for their own gain. But they're not willing to give it up and say, you know what? My main thing is to have peace in my life and to try and be as godly as I can and to encourage others to be the same. You're not going to encourage others like Muslims and stuff are bashing Islam or attacking Islam or calling Muhammad a pedophile. You're not going to benefit that. That's not going to help you. Even though you might think it will, it's not. It's not going to help you at all. In fact, it will drive them probably further to Islam and actually make them hate Christianity. Okay? It's like having a child basically and telling this child, don't do these things, don't do that. And you basically are kind of rigid. The kid's going to rebel against you and go do something else. But you instill in their mind something like, hey, I love you. I want the best for you. And these are the choices you have to make, and give them the knowledge, and then they do what they want with it. And that will probably be a lot more beneficial and resonate more than you making fun of a prophet, and then trying to get a one-up or something like that. Muslims are not going to take very nicely to it. And to be honest with you, Muslims, I don't really go with Muslims anyway, because Muslims usually will take from the Bible what they want, and then they disagree with what they don't. And so it's kind of like you can't win. Like, you can't have a discussion with the Bible when a Muslim will use the Bible verses they want, and then you pull up Bible verses that contradict what they believe, and they say, we don't believe those are forgeries. Well, so you can't. They use the Bible at their own will and cherry pick. And that's kind of what a lot of Christians do today. They cherry pick verses, and they just want to believe in something so bad. They want to defend the Trinity. They want to defend the oneness belief. And like I said, I'm done. I do not care. Yeah, that's true. Like, I don't care about that anymore. I'm not going to attack somebody's faith anymore. I'm done. I might even delete my channel. I don't know. But my mission is not to be on these panels. You'll never probably see me on another panel again. I have no desire to get on a panel and attack somebody's faith. I just don't. I don't have that desire anymore. A lot of people can't handle. I'm gonna get up there. I'm gonna debate. I'll get really angry, and they get all just. I used to not be me. I used to get kind of upset because I wouldn't be allowed to talk, and they would cut you off and they would talk over you. So you had to speak really fast, and then of course when you're on a channel where they bounce you off, you're not happy with the way you're being treated, so you're going to become agitated, and I didn't like that. It's like, that's not really a manly thing to do, to go on a channel and then start getting into your feels and start kind of acting kind of like flamboyant and loud. That's not what men do. Men are supposed to be poised and more stoic, and not be, when you're on these channels trying to argue and talk and get your word in really fast, you kind of look nuts. Okay, that's what I see. I see a lot of these men up there, and I was one of them. You just kind of look stupid. I mean, everybody's trying to get their time in and talk, and it's just like, it's really a sad waste of manly resources. As men, should be out there running the world and controlling things and doing good, but we're on panels that are endless. They're endless black holes of nothing. For what? And like I said, this 3 hours of me, this is probably my last video on this channel. So that's why I'm kind of isolated. 3 hours of me, which there's endless videos of countless channels on this that are on YouTube that do the same thing daily, where I could have been out helping people do something, helping an old lady do this, painting a. The reason why today is it's raining out, so I'm not this excuses, but I'm just saying in general, there's so many things that we can do in life. You got one life, you got one shot. And are you going to spend your valuable time? That today might be your last day on earth. It might be your last day to be able to relax and have a cup of tea, relax to have a cup of coffee, to hug your kids or your grandmother or whatever. That might be your last day. And you got to think about the time that you have. Okay, your time that you have spending time on panels talking about how you interpret the Bible is, when I look back on it, stupid. My time, thousands of hours, stupidly spent on things that do not really matter. I'm not going to change anybody's life. It's for my own benefit. It's for my own benefit. And again, that's because religion becomes addicting. You become addicted trying to find the truth. It's like a carrot that's placed in front of you and you'll never be able to take a bite of it. It's constantly going around the track, constantly, and you're chasing it and you'll never bite it. You'll never bite it. You'll never reach it because it's still going to be your interpretation, and you'll never be able to go, I got it. I just know for a fact. There's always going to be doubt because somebody else will come along that reads it differently and puts that doubt in your mind, or you just know that it could be read a different way. It's not clear, okay? God did not give us a Bible to be a puzzle book to go through and try to figure out all of these puzzles, okay? And try to figure out this mystery of the Bible. And when our eternity is on the line, we have to figure these things out. And we're walking on a razor's edge. If we get it wrong, we're going to go to hell. And God's going to kick us out and banish us, and we're going to get it wrong. And we got to spend most of our life trying to convince others of our interpretation. The oneness believers and the Trinitarians, oh, they're deceived, but I have the truth. I've been enlightened. It's just like, I don't know. I've been there, done that, and I got the t-shirt and it's ripped, and I'm never going back for another one, So I think that if I can help other people, which, like I said, sometimes it takes a massive wake-up call. Sometimes it takes somebody that just reaches a point. Like I said, I took my TikTok channel off of TikTok because I just saw too much. Like, it was just nasty, man. People were fighting, yelling, cussing. I didn't like the attitudes people were having. It's totally really fleshly, really spiritually draining. And it was just basically like Clubhouse on crack. Okay, people debating, arguing. You go on there, and there's always fighting, a new debate, every debate. Not a single time when I was in there, I was on there for a long time, did they talk about spiritual fruit or helping somebody else or benefiting. It was basically debate channel. And that's all Christianity is today. And what is what is causing that? The Bible. The Bible is the biggest cause of all of that. Because the Bible is a confusing mess of riddles and inference and your belief versus somebody else's belief. You wouldn't have all this infighting and debating if you had a clear, concise instruction set from God. And that's just because the Bible is not biblically true, all of it. But if people want to believe it, like I said, I'll never talk about trying to go on and debate somebody, and you'll never see me. I can promise you, you will never see me on any channels trying to argue and destroy somebody's faith in the Bible. I won't get on and say, well, I don't believe the Bible is this way. I'll never do that. You'll never see me do that. I can promise you that. I have no desire to do that. I have no desire to destroy anybody's faith, whether you're Muslim, Hindu, or whatever. I look at people completely different now. It's like overnight things change. Just like it was like what the heck am I doing? Okay. And I think it takes it takes it takes kind of an eye opener for you to just realize that. And now it's more peace. Like I don't have any desire to argue. Everything's calm. Everything's cool, collected. Before it was like I couldn't wait to get up and just do something that would be kind of like make a attack video, because again that's a norepinephrine or the dopamine hit that you're getting out of getting some thrill. That's not spiritual. That's you driving your flesh. Okay. Yeah. So anyway, I got to go. God bless you. Peace, love, and blessings to you. Good to see each of them. But for me, I'll probably be gone. This could be my last video. But if I do make videos in the future, it will be for positivity towards religious things, not towards Christianity. I think Christianity is a great thing. I think for the people that it works, great. Keep it. Okay. I'll never attack somebody's Christian faith, because of all the religions, like I said, if I had to gravitate towards one of them, it would be Christianity, because I see the most fruit from it. I see it makes the most sense, even though Christianity itself is a disaster. It's a disaster. But it's up to individuals to sift through that disaster and not disturb somebody else's peace when they're also trying to sift through that same disaster. Okay. And I'm always open to being wrong. Okay. I'm not saying I just dismiss the Bible entirely. I could be totally wrong, and the Bible could be 100% true. I'm not eliminating any of that. Okay. But do I believe that? No, I don't. But I'm not somebody who's so closed-minded that I dismiss everything and I believe. There's always a possibility. I'm always leaving that open, because I am a truth seeker. I care about truth no matter what it is. I'm not dogmatic, where I've known lots of people, and most Christians that I know, friends of mine, are dogmatic. They really don't care what evidence you present them. They're going to believe in the Bible no matter, even if it's ridiculous, even to the point where they make things up and they have to just be silly to defend it. They will defend it. I'm not like that. I'm not built like that. Okay. I have to have logic, common sense, and reasoning, because God gave me that. I don't turn these things off because I want to believe in something. That's dangerous. Then I'm no better than anybody else. Okay. You have to be objective. You have to be open to being wrong. And when we turn ourselves off, when we believe a book that's plagued with problems, and that's not enough for us, and we don't go, okay, well, man, we turn that off and we ignore that. Well, I don't care if it's plagued with problems. Well, I don't care if books have been removed. I don't care if God did that. I don't care if this. It's just a book of excuses that people are making. And that's your journey. If you want to do that, and it brings you, like, if it's too uncomfortable to rationalize things, that's okay. I understand that. But I'm not built like that. I have to trust what my gut tells me. And I just see too many problems in religion for me to adhere to any of them. Okay. But I respect people that believe in the Bible, and I wish them good speed and God bless. And I think it's a beautiful thing. If somebody has faith in the Bible and they love it and that keeps them going, more power to you. Okay. I will never say that's not, like, who am I to say? Who am I to judge somebody else's faith? Okay. If they want to believe in a certain way, don't interrupt somebody's faith like that. Like, your interpretation should matter to you. That's their interpretation. Maybe talk about your belief, but don't try to convince you that your interpretation is more legitimate than theirs, because everybody's got their own interpretation. That's what the Bible is. It's how you read it. It can be it can be 1,000 different beliefs depending on who reads it. See, that's more proof that it's man-made. And so your reading of it has no more better understanding than mine. I'm nobody out there. You are not either. So, take what makes the most sense to you and makes you become more spiritual. And that's the most important thing in life, not how you read the Bible is any better than anybody else. And with that being said, God bless you.